This boy obtained a ring in the middle of the apocalypse, a ring capable of letting him travel between different worlds. In the apocalypse, food is worth more than gold. You can buy anything if you have food. Song brought a tray of tomatoes and sold it for 10 kilograms of gold. He even traded a tray of lettuce for beautiful women. In other words, anything is possible. And so, amidst the storm and the city's destruction, monsters roam the streets. Shortly after, a young man wakes up tied in an unknown place where a woman asks for his name. Suddenly, the crack of a belt makes his eyes widen. Then, the woman stretches the belt and questions why he invaded their base. Still tied up, the young man answers that his name is Song Chao and he was just passing through. But, not believing him, the woman tells him to stop stalling and save them both some time. With that, she points to a girl eating tomatoes and asks why he would carry something so precious with monsters everywhere. At that moment, the other girl spits out what she was eating and asks if he injected anesthetic or something similar into the tomatoes. Right after the question, the girl starts coughing non-stop, while the other two just watch. As soon as she recovers, she tells her sister, Shen Jamel, that she's tested the tomatoes and they only have pesticide residue. Then, the woman, now identified as Shen Jiayao, just puts a hand to her head at the other's comment. Taking advantage of the distraction, the young man asks if the two sisters could please untie him first. In response, he just gets whipped. Next, Shen Jiayao leans over him and warns that after falling into the hands of the West City duo, he shouldn't try any more tricks. Finally, she stares him down and says not to think a pretty face will stop him from being attacked, before demanding he tell the truth. From the corner of his eye, Song Chao watches the woman's reaction. Immediately, Shen Jiayao grabbed him by the collar and shouted, asking where the tomatoes came from and if there were more. Hearing the question, he finally realized he had truly traveled to an apocalyptic place. At that moment, the young man remembered how dangerous and careful he'd been traveling alone. He recalled finding the tomatoes next to one creature and nearly being killed by another before he was saved. Suddenly, his body is thrown to the ground once more. Right then, Shen Jiayao accuses him of plotting something and demands he tell the truth. Without giving him time to answer, she threatens him if he doesn't tell her what he knows right away. Desperate, he begs the woman to stop being so rough and assures her he wasn't sent by anyone. Hearing this, the girl just lets him go, letting him fall. On the ground, he explains he came from another base to trade and can offer more tomatoes if they help him. At the offer, Shen Jiayao is surprised by the possibility that he has more. Then, the woman questions him about what kind of trade he was planning and if he happened to be a slave trader. And so, the two stare at each other in silence for a moment. Suddenly, the other one complains that the tomatoes are too sour and asks if he has anything else. Right after, she ends up demanding he get vegetables and eggs too. Instantly, Shen Jiayao tells her foolish sister to calm down and asks her where it would even be possible to find eggs in this world. She then explains that the chickens have mutated, so their eggs are no longer edible. With this revelation, Song Chao realizes that even basic items like vegetables and eggs have become rare, concluding it was already too late for this place. Now untied, the young man gestures and asks what kind of goods he can trade for food. Meanwhile, he reflects on how a strange ring brought him here and decides he needs to make a profit to help his family. With that, Shen Jiayao starts listing the items they have available for trade. In the negotiation, the woman offers energy modules, laser weapons, and even beautiful women as slaves. However, the mere mention of buying women leaves the young man completely shocked. In his mind, he starts to imagine the possibility of trading eggs and tomatoes for beautiful women. Immediately, Shen Jiayao grabs him again and accuses him of being interested in the slave trade. However, he denies everything and says it was a misunderstanding, as he wanted to trade for gold and diamonds. She just watches him with a suspicious look. Then, the woman asks what he would need items like those for. Shen Jiayao then points outside and states that those things haven't had any value for a long time. Right after, she stares at him intensely and demands to know who he really is. Caught off guard, Song Chao hesitates, not knowing what to say. So, he changes tactics and explains that food is plentiful at his base, so everyone values items to please women. Finally, he proposes they make a deal so they can both get what they need, whether it's food or jewelry. Faced with the proposal, Shen Jiayao questions how the trade would work and if he could provide tomatoes regularly amidst the radiation. With a smile, the young man assures them that his base has so much food he can come every few days, as long as they accommodate him. The two sisters immediately react to his choice of words, with the older one warning that they don't provide special services. With that, he clears up the misunderstanding and stresses that he just needs his personal safety guaranteed when he arrives. The two look at each other for a moment, considering the offer. Then, the older sister agrees to the deal, but warns that they need to make the price very clear. Pointing to the buckets, Shen Jiayao establishes that 1 tomato can be traded for 10 kilograms of gold or items of similar value. Without hesitation, he agrees to the terms and says that to start their cooperation, those tomatoes are theirs. To seal the deal, the woman takes one of the tomatoes as a provision and then eats it. As she eats, Shen Jiayao comments that she hasn't eaten anything so clean in years. With that, the young man says that now that the negotiations are over, he'd like to say goodbye. Before he can finish his sentence, his head is slammed against the wall, and the woman tells him he can move around freely. Next, she clarifies that leaving the factory or getting out of her sight is not an option. She then explains that the mutant beasts in the area have been contained, but not completely. So the woman warns him not to blame her if he decides to wander off and meets his end. Undeterred, he asks if he can look for a bathroom. With a red face, she yells that it's fine and he can go. Upon leaving the warehouse, the young man celebrates finally escaping that place. Shortly after, he stops and reflects that there must be a reason for everything that happened that day. The answer comes when he remembers that the ring on his finger was the cause of his journey between dimensions. He then recalls buying the ring at a stall, thinking it was nothing special. Curious, he decides to turn the ring's stone to see what might happen. Immediately, the object emits an intense glow that completely envelops him. Then, a bright light transports him to another place as he watches, unable to react. In the middle of an energy portal, his body was pulled into a vortex. Right after, he reappeared in a new place as the surrounding energy dissipated. Looking around, Song Chao realized he had returned to a familiar field and announced that he was back. At that moment, he remembered the vendor saying he had a bright future and that the celestial ring would be sold only to him. Finally, the man offered a discount and handed him the ring for just 199 yen. The young man was left wondering just who that old man was. A final memory of the old man being chased by the police surfaced in his mind. He paused for a moment, trying to process everything. Faced with the situation, Song Chao scratched his head and decided he needed to find the old man and ask some questions. Suddenly, a voice called his name and told him to stop right there. Immediately, a woman confronted him, demanding to know when he would pay back the 10,000 yen his family owed. Not knowing what to say, the young man just tried to come up with an excuse. The woman then explained that she needed the money because her son would be starting college soon. Clasping his hands, he begged Auntie Zhang for a few more days, promising to pay the debt as soon as he had the money. At that moment, he remembered borrowing the money for his sick parents' treatment. His only motivation was the hope of getting gold from that other world to solve everything. As he tried to justify himself, the woman complained that he'd promised to pay years ago and always made excuses. Desperate, he promised to settle the debt in 3 days with interest, but she just scoffed and said his parents would be better off dead. Hearing those words, his eyes glowed red as she continued to insult him. In a swift move, Song Chao nearly struck her and threatened to kill her if she said another word about his family. The woman just stared at him, completely terrified by his reaction. With his fist against the wall, he guaranteed he would pay the money back the next day with interest, telling her not to worry. He then ordered her to get out of there immediately, while she watched, frightened by his demeanor. Still shaken, the woman accused him of scaring her and threatened to find someone to force him to pay if he didn't keep his promise. He just watched her leave in silence. With a clenched fist, he decided he had to seize this opportunity to give his family a better life. The next day, outside the market, the young man prepared 2 buckets filled with fresh vegetables. After placing the buckets next to a box, he confirmed that everything was ready to go. With everything prepared, he turned the stone on his ring to activate the portal. Immediately, a large vortex of energy opened before him, ready to transport him to the other world. As soon as he arrived, he confirmed the return spot hadn't changed, but then the barrel of a gun appeared beside him. In an instant, the gun was pressed against his forehead. Then, a female voice welcomed him as a finger readied itself on the trigger. Next, Shen Jiayao asked why he took so long to come back. With a smile on her face, she questioned him about his sudden disappearance the day before. Nervous, the young man tried to calm himself and explained that he had just gone back to get some food. He then turned and asked if they wanted some vegetables and eggs. As he said this, he declared he would show them what he brought. At that moment, looking at his hands, he realized there was nothing there and became confused. Just then, the younger sister called for Shen Jiayao to see what had appeared. On the ground, 2 buckets full of fresh vegetables and a box of eggs had materialized out of thin air. At the sight, the older woman just stared at the items, unable to hide her surprise. Immediately, her mouth watering, she swallowed hard at the sight of the food. Then, Shen Jiayao ordered him to go cook, and he readily agreed. A short time later, the young man was preparing the meal, while the 2 sisters eagerly ate the fresh vegetables. While the younger sister celebrated finally eating fresh greens, the older one asked if he had been hiding the food nearby. She explained that, As far as she knew, there was nothing but zombies and mutant beasts within a 10-kilometer radius of the base. With a suspicious look, she pressed him to tell her where the hell he got that food. Finally, Song Chao replied that he always carried enough food when he went out, and told her not to worry about the rest. He then changed the subject, asking if there was a safe nearby so they could start working together. However, the woman explained that they were in the residential suburbs, and even if there were a safe, they wouldn't have the equipment to open it. Hearing her answer, the young man just scowled. Indignant, he accused her of being a fraud since there was no safe to get the gold she had promised in exchange for the tomatoes. With a smile, Shen Jiayao winked and said that while there was no safe, what he was looking for should be in the nearby villas. He urged her to leave right away, but the woman questioned his haste, since she had just filled her stomach. With determination, the young man insisted he was in a hurry and that they needed to go now. Finally, she stared at him for a moment before making a decision. Then, with a gesture, she agreed to go out for some post-dinner exercise. She then instructed her sister, Jia Mei, to stay and guard the base against any intruders. To finish, she gave the final order: shoot to kill if anyone showed up. As they were leaving, Song Chao asked if she could handle it alone without her sister, but Shen Jiayao simply replied that he was still there. Then, the woman reassured him, saying they had swept the area for mutants many times before. As they passed through the door, she informed him that once they arrived, he could take whatever he found. As he got ready to leave, Song Chao introduced himself as just an ordinary guy who had traveled to the future and was panicking a little. Just before, Shen Jiayao had tossed a watch in his direction, ordering him to put it on. With the object in his hand, the young man asked if it was just a toy. He then inspected the device and wanted to know how it worked. Surprised, the woman stared at him when she realized he didn't know how to use the device. So he explained that he wasn't a combatant and had never even seen the monsters she mentioned. At this, Shen Jiayao sighed and revealed it was a soldier's multifunctional watch. Then, she began to explain that the watch could track his position. The device was also capable of detecting environmental radiation. The demonstration ended when her helmet activated, revealing the function to contact teammates. Without wasting time, she grabbed him by the shirt and told them to leave immediately. As she guided him to a motorbike, the woman mentioned he could study the watch on the way. The sight of the wheelless motorbike made him react with astonishment. Once on the vehicle, Shen Jiayao asked him directly if he was from this world or not. Next, she questioned why he didn't know what a maglev was as she prepared to leave. With her visor activated, the soldier just glanced back for a moment. Caught off guard, he stammered and assured her that he was from this world. However, she just stared at him through her visor, unconvinced. Without giving it much thought, she just told him to hold on tight. With a powerful thrust, the bike took off and shot forward through the air. Startled by the takeoff, the young man grabbed her tightly to keep from falling off the moving vehicle. Annoyed by the contact, she yelled at him to let go immediately. Still, he held on for the entire ride. Because of this, the woman threatened him, saying she would cut off his hand if he moved it. After some time in the air, he commented on how quiet the place was. As they crossed a field, he asked again, and she reminded him that they had already cleared the area. She explained that there was nothing around but zombies and mutant beasts. Just then, a creature leaped from the grass towards them, proving the place was only quiet after a slaughter. Startled by the surprise attack, the young man yelled for her to be careful. Without hesitation, Shen Jiayao drew her weapon and aimed at the approaching creature. With a smile, she told him to relax, since Auntie was on the job. As they pulled away, she told him not to make a fuss, as it was just a rat, leaving its destroyed body behind. Curious, he asked if the gun was for sale and how much food it would cost. She just replied that the laser gun was worthless. Next, she informed him that he could get one for just an egg when they reached the Linjiang base, as a futuristic city appeared on the horizon. The idea of trading an egg for a gun made him pause for a moment. As they flew over a luxury condo, Song Chao reflected that in this apocalyptic world, you had to be armed to the teeth. Landing in front of a fountain, Shen Jiayao announced they had arrived. Soon after, the two approached a large mansion. Then, the woman drew 2 pistols and loaded them. She instructed him to stay close and not wander off, and he immediately agreed. Reaching the door, she commented that it had been a while since she was last in the area. She then warned that exploring might be a bit tricky before heading inside. Peeking through a gap, the young man was surprised by what he saw inside. The living room, though luxurious, was completely trashed and covered in bloodstains. He just swallowed hard at the sight. Despite the mess, he noticed that even the sofa was worth a lot of money, but his partner urged him on, saying they needed to leave before dark. Going up the stairs, the woman instructed them to head straight for the master bedroom. Once in the room, she explained that valuables were usually kept there. After a quick look, Song Chao commented that there didn't seem to be much and suggested they leave. Suddenly, Shen Jiayao stomped hard on the floor, startling him with the noise. He was immediately impressed by what he saw next. A secret door with a safe was revealed, prompting the young man to ask how she knew it was there. With a distant look, she explained that her old house was even more luxurious, so she was used to hiding spots like this. She then helped him shoot the lock on the safe. With the door open, the two went inside and found a miniature golden ship. Seeing the treasure, the young man celebrated, having finally found what he was looking for. Faced with so much gold and so many boxes, he realized he was going to be rich this time. Shen Jiayao then suggested he check if he wanted anything else before they moved on to the next location. His eyes gleaming, Song Chao held the solid gold boat and exclaimed that this was exactly what he wanted. Suddenly, his eyes were drawn to something else inside the safe. In one of the drawers, he found a solitaire ring. He picked it up, thinking that something hidden so well in a safe room must be valuable. After examining the ring closely, he decided to keep it for now. With the golden ship in hand, he announced he was ready and they could leave. Suddenly, a noise from outside made the young man's eyes widen. As soon as he asked what was happening, Shen Jiayao shushed him and said she heard something. Not understanding what was going on, Song Chao just watched the scene unfold. Meanwhile, Shen Jiayao went to the window to see what was outside. Suddenly, her watch started beeping, and she wondered if it was them. Seeing her reaction, the young man wanted to know what was happening and if it was a friend. The woman explained they weren't friends, but a group from the southern suburbs that had tried to sell them as slaves several times. She then revealed that the group was being attacked by a swarm of mutant wasps. With a smile, Shen Jiayao just commented that they were getting what they deserved. A moment later, Song Chao's watch also beeped, displaying a hologram of the mutant wasp. Faced with the situation, the woman considered this the perfect chance to get rid of them once and for all. With that in mind, she decided they needed to jump out the window before they were seen. Without hesitation, Shen Jiayao leaped out, while Song Chao just watched from inside. The woman landed safely on the ground. He jumped right after, but landed awkwardly, prompting her to comment on his terrible physical shape. She then questioned if he hadn't been injected with genetic enhancers. As he ran, he asked if there was a way to buy them, and Shen Jiayao replied that one cost about 30 eggs. Urging him on, she told him to stop talking and just run, as she shot a path through the debris. A moment later, one of the men from the other group yelled for them to stop and help. Without hesitating, the woman fired at them and replied that there was no way she would help. With that, she handed a gun to Song Chao and ordered him to help her shoot. With the gun in his hands, the young man didn't know what to do. As bullets whizzed past them, Shen Jiayao insisted that he hold the gun and help her. As soon as he took the gun, the young man just stared at it, unsure of what to do. A moment later, he admitted he didn't know how to use that type of weapon. Hearing that, the woman just clicked her tongue in disapproval. Because of this, she complained about her bad luck for taking his job as her watch beeped. Suddenly, 2 grenades materialized in her hand. Confused, the young man asked what those objects were. Right away, his partner explained they were flash and smoke grenades. She then threw them and told him not to forget to bring food to reimburse her for the items. A moment later, the enemy just screamed in confusion as the devices exploded. Amidst the smoke, the woman yelled for him to run, but their opponent spotted them. In that instant, the man fired in their direction, cursing at them not to try and escape. Although an energy shield activated to block the shot, it shattered on impact, and she was hit squarely. Witnessing the scene, Song Chao screamed her name, Shen Jiawen. Even with a shoulder wound, the fighter just stared back at him with one eye closed. As blood dripped from her shoulder, he screamed her name again. Worried, the young man asked if she was okay, but his partner assured him it was nothing and told him to keep running. She then ducked to dodge the shots coming her way. Meanwhile, the enemy kept shooting at the mutant wasps that were chasing them. In the meantime, the two ran down the street as the creatures launched energy projectiles. With her gun raised, Shen Jiawen started firing back. Shortly after, she prepared for a direct confrontation. In that moment, the woman leaped towards a motorcycle that appeared, floating in the air. Already in control of the vehicle, she held out her hand to him and yelled for him to grab it. Without hesitating, the young man grabbed her hand tightly. Realizing they were getting away, the enemy shouted at them not to dare escape. Finally, as they sped off on the bike, their pursuer yelled her name one last time. While the younger sister grumbled about the situation, Shen Jiawen treated the wound as Song Chao apologized, promising not to back down next time. With her hair now tied up, the warrior advised him to practice his shooting, since she couldn't rely on his fighting skills. Next, she used a medical injector that instantly sealed the wound on his arm. Surprised by the medicine's effectiveness, the young man realized he needed to prepare food to trade for it as soon as possible. Suddenly, he said his goodbyes, explaining he had something to do and would see them next time. At that moment, Shen Jiawen questioned if he was sure he wanted to leave, since the enemies could return at any minute. Even with his back turned, He insisted he couldn't stay and really needed to go back now. Faced with his insistence, the woman simply told him to go, while he promised to bring more food as compensation. Soon after walking away, Song Chao glanced around to make sure he was alone in the shed. With the area secure, an energy enveloped him, and he vanished completely. A moment later, the younger sister peeked out from behind a pillar and confirmed he was gone. Then, Shen Jiawen picked up her destroyed armor and cursed those bastards from the south for the damage. With a disappointed look, she realized she could no longer wear that outfit. When asked what was wrong, the fighter touched her communicator and reported that he had completely disappeared. Back at the base, the veteran called her sister, Shen Jiame, on the communicator to have her return. With the damaged jacket in hand, she just found the situation interesting. The woman then reflected that there was truly something special about that young man. Given the facts, she sat down and began to think about what to do next. Meanwhile, far away, Song Chao admired the golden ship, celebrating that he could finally improve life back home. As soon as he returned to his own time, he headed to a shop on a sunny afternoon. Inside the establishment, a blonde woman watched him with a suspicious expression. Sitting at the counter, the young man just pondered how he would sell the gold. After a while, the saleswoman approached and asked if she could help him, as he had been there for over an hour. With a smile, he explained he had a golden art piece to sell and asked if they accepted them. The woman confirmed they bought gold, but only with a receipt, as they didn't accept items from unknown sources. Awkwardly, he just said he would look elsewhere first and left. Once outside, Song Chao told himself that he had to sell that gold no matter what. A short time later, he was seen running from a shop while being accused of stealing the item. An hour later, the young man was kicked out of another place but remained determined to find a buyer someday. Later, he refused to sell for 100 at a pawn shop, demanding at least 300 for the gold. By nightfall, he sat on a bench, completely disheartened that he couldn't sell the item at all. With that, he realized he had never imagined how difficult it would be to sell the gold he had. Suddenly, a man stopped in front of him and asked how many pieces he was selling. Surprised by the approach, the young man just looked up, not knowing what to say. Before him stood a gentleman in a hat, watching him and waiting for an answer. At that moment, the man smiled and invited him to come to his shop with the merchandise. As they walked down a dark, empty street under the moonlight, the two walked side by side. Soon after, the man invited him to enter his antique shop. With a gesture, the gentleman welcomed him to his no-questions-asked antique store. Sitting in his chair, he introduced himself as the manager of the place, Zhou Fuyuan. From there, he asked the young man to show him the pieces he was selling. A bit awkwardly, Song Chao just agreed to the request. He then revealed the large, brightly shining golden sailboat. At that moment, he explained that it was a work of art in perfect condition, sold at the price of regular gold, which impressed the manager. With a magnifying glass, the old man examined the piece up close and commented on how incredible it was. After the analysis, Zhou Fuyuan confirmed it was real gold with excellent craftsmanship and prepared to make an offer. He then assured him that he was a fair businessman who followed the general price of gold and art, while the young man listened intently. After weighing the piece, the manager offered the market value as a friendly deal between them. As a notification arrived on the young man's phone, the merchant advised him to bring any other treasures there first. Seeing the amount of 740,000 yuan on the screen, the young man realized he was finally rich. With his phone in hand, Song Chao celebrated having finally gotten the money. Once he arrived, Song Chao knocked on Auntie Zhang's door to settle the score. Suspicious, the woman peeked through a crack and asked who it was before opening the door. For a moment, her gaze remained fixed. With his phone in hand, the young man announced he was there to pay the debt via a transfer. Even without understanding, Auntie Zhang let him in and told him to settle the payment directly with her son. Next, the woman called for Zhang Jun to come and collect the money. The young man soon appeared, questioning if, after all this time, the debt would finally be paid. The visitor then confirmed he would make the transfer through his phone. With that, he opened the payment app to complete the transaction. While looking at the phone, Zhang Jun insulted him, calling him a lazy country bumpkin and his family useless. The young man's expression changed completely upon hearing the insult. He then announced that the 10,000 debt was paid with 2,000 in interest, because a man should be grateful and have manners. Next, he warned that he would make Zhang Jun regret it if he said another word about his family. The threat left the mother and son completely terrified. The young man then pointed and yelled about the threat, but the other simply asked if it really was one. With an intimidating glare, he asked if Zhang Jun really wanted to test him. His opponent's reaction was one of pure shock before Song Chao finally left at dusk. Later that night, the debt was finally paid. Lying in his bed, the young man began to plan on buying a new bed for his parents, and maybe even a house. Soon, his thoughts turned to what might have happened to the sisters in the other world. Looking at the ring on his finger, he decided it might be best to check on them later. The next day, Song Chao returned to the warehouse in the other world. With a backpack on his shoulders, he walked through the place. Soon after, he opened the door with a smile and announced he was back. In the same instant, a gun was pressed against his head. It was Shen Jiawen, questioning if it was really him, while Shen Jiamei watched from behind. With his hands up, the young man asked the woman not to shoot and confirmed his identity. The veteran then lowered her weapon and wanted to know what he was doing there again. The young man tried to find out if the group from the previous day had returned, but she cut him off, saying it was none of his business. At that, the woman questioned why he came back after running away, and he explained that he had promised to find his sister. Intrigued, Shen Jiawen suggested he bring this sister to the shelter. Awkwardly, Song Chao made up that she was a bit unwell at the moment. Suspicious, the woman moved closer to ask if his sister was a mutant. The young man quickly confirmed, adding that she was very aggressive and didn't trust anyone. The explanation didn't seem to convince the two sisters, who just watched him in silence. To change the subject, the visitor opened his backpack and offered the bacon and sausages he had brought. After everyone ate, the table was filled with empty plates and bowls. With a sigh of satisfaction, Shen Jiamei showed just how much she had enjoyed the meal. She quickly commented that she was full and satisfied, as she hadn't eaten so well in a long time. Then, the youngest suggested her older sister should marry Song Chao so they would never have to worry about their last meal again. Hearing this bold suggestion, Shen Jiawen gave her a light smack on the head. She then scolded the girl and told her not to try and sell her off to anyone. As he watched the scene, the young man seemed to remember something important. Then, the woman explained they needed to go to Linjiang base the next day for supplies and invited him to come along. His response was an immediate and enthusiastic yes. Turning to the leader, he confirmed that he would definitely go with them on the mission. The young man then listed that he also had many things to buy, like genetic enhancement fluid and combat suits. Hearing his plan to get 10 of each, Shen Jiawen questioned if he could carry that much weight. She immediately warned him that Linjiang's genetic enhancer was low grade, and taking it more than once was useless. Song Chao explained he was buying for some friends and asked what time they would leave. After a moment's thought, the warrior informed him they would leave at 10 ryu, but he would need to bring more food to have enough money. With a thumbs up, the young man assured them not to worry, as he would bring more than enough food. The next morning, the group prepared to leave amidst the abandoned city. With a thud, Song Chao dropped 2 heavy suitcases on the warehouse floor. Beside a surprised Shen Jiawen, he stated that this was enough for the trip. As soon as they opened the suitcases, the sisters were amazed to see fruits, vegetables, eggs, and even meat. The young man then explained he would leave 2 suitcases as payment, and the rest would be for shopping, to which they agreed. With a big smile, he commented that he was really looking forward to it. At that moment, Shen Jiamei once again nudged her sister, suggesting she should hurry up and marry him. Embarrassed, the older sister told the girl to stop talking and get in the vehicle so they could leave. Then, the yellow vehicle took off at high speed and set off on the mission. As they traveled, the young man seemed a bit confused by the landscape. His surprise grew when they spotted gigantic walls on the horizon. The young man then asked the youngest if that was a military base behind the walls. With her eyes sparkling, the girl just confirmed that it was. Shen Jiamei then explained that it was the Linjiang military base, a human fortress with 3 walls and defenses that no mutant dared to cross. Upon arriving at the base entrance, the group joined others who were also waiting to get in. Meanwhile, one of the armed guards instructed everyone in line to maintain order and scan their cards. Soon, the entrance gate was opened so they could proceed. While waiting, Song Chao asked how much food was needed to get electronic money, and Shen Jiawen explained the exchange rate. Then, the young woman brought her arm close to the sensor to validate her entry. At that moment, one of the guards taunted her, asking if the twins from the west side were raising men now. With a look of contempt, she told him to shut his mouth and just do his job. The soldier, however, only responded with a mocking chuckle. With their passage cleared, the main gate opened along with a welcome greeting to Linjiang base. The young man was then completely mesmerized by the sight before him. The inner city revealed itself as a futuristic place, filled with neon lights and advanced technology. The streets of that post-apocalyptic fortress were bustling and full of life. All around, people with different outfits and appearances moved about the place. Seeing the commotion, the young man questioned if it was safe since they had handed over their weapons, but Shen Jiawen reassured him. However, his expression changed when he noticed a less glamorous side of the city. In a dark corner, he spotted 2 thin, sickly-looking men sitting on the ground. One of them looked in his direction with a hopeless expression. Observing the scene, Song Chao realized the harsh reality of this devastated world. Suddenly, a man began to shout in the middle of the street, drawing everyone's attention. He announced loudly that he had a beautiful woman, newly arrived from the south. With a weary look, the young woman just listened in silence as the offer was made for 10 electronic coins. Hearing the price, Song Chao was shocked to realize that it was only worth 5 eggs. At that moment, Shen Jiawen's voice came from his side, questioning if he was tempted by the offer. She then advised him to mind his own business and not get involved. The young man quickly denied it, saying he couldn't waste food on that and they should head for the exchange. Shen Jiawen agreed and explained that the people there would do anything for food. She added that they might even steal everything he had during the night. A short while later, the woman stopped walking and indicated they had reached their destination. The group then headed to a building identified as the Exchange Bureau. Before they went in, she instructed Song Chao to remain silent and act indifferent. According to her advice, this behavior would prevent him from being looked down upon inside. As soon as they crossed the entrance, 2 uniformed men watched them approach the counter. One of them asked Shen Jiawen if she had anything good to sell. In response, the woman placed a large suitcase on the counter and said this was it. The man seemed surprised and wanted to know what was inside the suitcase. With a slight smile, Shen Jiawen ordered him to exchange the entire contents for electronic currency. As soon as the suitcase was opened, the clerk asked in disbelief if she would really trade all of it, but his partner repeated the question, shocked by the huge amount of eggs inside. Soon, the older man shouted when he noticed there were also fresh vegetables among the items. The sight of nearly 3 kilos of fresh meat left everyone in the place impressed. Even the other people in line reacted with astonishment at the news of the food. With that, the clerk grabbed the counter and questioned where the hell they had come from. Then, his colleague whispered to be careful, as they might be royalty from a large base. Faced with this, the man agreed to make the exchange immediately, while the young Shen Jiawen urged him to hurry. She then warned him not to try anything funny, as she would be watching his every move. A short time later, Shen Jimei excitedly celebrated receiving 470 points for the exchange. The girl then shouted that they were going shopping, while her sister and Song Chao watched with a smile. At that moment, the young man said she could buy whatever she wanted on his dime, not noticing that someone was spying on them from afar. Hiding in the alley, the man concluded they were a good target, and that he needed to inform the tiger. In a bar, the informant told his boss, Tiger, that a fat sheep was in town and had exchanged over 400 credits. While smoking, the group's leader remarked that it was an impressive amount. The man then detailed that the exchange included eggs, fruit, and 3 kilos of pork, which made Tiger doubtful. The informant assured him he was absolutely certain of the information he was providing. The gang leader then realized that pork was an extremely rare product in the region. With 2 women by his side, the criminal asked about the potential target size. The answer was just 3 people, a man and 2 women, still at Market 1. With a cigar between his fingers, the leader called for Old Six. He ordered his men to watch the road to the West District. Tiger reflected that anyone who could afford pork these days was very rich. The success of this plan would make him even richer. Meanwhile, Shen Jiawen asked if Song Chao was sure he wanted to go to the market. The young man replied that she wasn't the only one with things to buy there. With that, the woman agreed and suggested they split up and meet when they were done shopping. The young man's first stop was a shop displaying various weapon models in its window. To Song Chao's surprise, Shen Jimei decided to join him at the weapon shop at the last second. Immediately after, an automated interface projected a welcome message from the device on his wrist. The holographic projection left him stunned for a moment. The system then welcomed him to the Linjiang base market while displaying the available shopping options. Upon entering, Song Chao was impressed by a giant combat robot on display in the shop. He quickly realized this market was truly filled with all kinds of equipment. The young man just gave a nervous laugh. A little later, the 2 sisters left him alone to do their own shopping, leaving him completely overwhelmed. Annoyed, he complained that they didn't even assist the customer and that he would give them a bad review. While interacting with the holographic panel, the young man lamented that they could have at least told him where to go. The system then presented the specifications for an automatic pistol in a hologram. His eyes widened as an idea struck him. He decided he needed to arm himself to survive and could no longer hide behind a woman. A short time later, he left the shop wearing a new protective suit. Holding the gun he had bought, he wondered if it would be enough to protect himself. A voice then commented on his new look, and he turned to see who it was. With a smile, the young man simply welcomed them back. He soon noticed that Shen Jiawen and Shen Jiamei were also wearing new combat suits. The older sister then commented that his choice of defensive gear wasn't bad. With another smile, Shen Jiawen noted that at least he understood what was at stake, but she quickly warned him they had spent all the money. Surprised, Song Chao asked how that was possible, since he thought it was a lot of money. The woman explained that precisely because it was so much money, they bought many things, while her sister thanked him for the candy. Indignant, the young man asked who authorized buying candy, but Shen Jiawen just told him not to worry about it. Immediately after, Tiger's group appeared and surrounded the three of them in the middle of the street. On the deserted road, Tiger's men took their positions for the planned ambush. Soon the group's yellow vehicle approached, flying at high speed through the night sky. Using a tech visor, the scout locked onto the target to confirm its position. The man then stood up and alerted his comrades that the target was here. One of the henchmen then turned to call the boss, who was waiting for the signal. Tiger soon appeared from behind, remarking that the prey had finally arrived. With a smirk, the gang leader agreed that everything was ready for the attack. He then yelled at his lazy men to get ready for action. Tiger's last order was not to kill the sheep, as the goal was only the money. With a smile on his face, he gave the command to fire, and his men prepared to shoot. In that same instant, a huge explosion engulfed the vehicle and the road in a fireball. One of the henchmen looked at the result of the attack, not understanding what had happened. Tiger immediately yelled at his man, asking how they were supposed to get the money after killing them. The gang boss then called them idiots, saying that if their targets were blown up, the trip was for nothing. As they got closer, the henchmen found only the flaming wreckage of the vehicle in the middle of the road. At that same moment, Tiger's eye caught a projectile being fired in his direction at extremely high speed. With that, a second, even larger explosion engulfed everyone and sent the henchmen flying. In the distance, a celebratory shout echoed amidst the fire of the explosion. Smoke was still rising from the barrel of the weapon that had been fired. With a victorious smile, the shooter bragged about hitting them all with a single shot. While Song Chao was still on the ground, Shen Jiamei cheered that everything had been blown to bits. Amidst the fire, Tiger realized what had actually happened and cursed the deception. Lying on the ground, he tried to understand what was going on as he saw his men scattered about. The leader got up, looked at the explosion, and wondered if they had been bombed. He soon realized it was a counter-ambush, where they had used the empty car as bait for a long-range attack. From this, Tiger concluded that a second wave of artillery would be coming soon. The gang leader immediately shouted for his men to get ready. The order was for one of the henchmen to take a few men and go deal with the snipers. The man then called his comrades to follow him toward the attack. From a distance, Song Chao watched the enemy group advance. Shen Jiamei then warned her sister that someone was coming their way. The young woman looked at her weapon with a concerned expression. She soon realized the ammunition hadn't finished loading yet. With that, she admitted she wasn't good at short to medium range combat, but remembering a piece of advice from Shen Jiawen, she decided that nothing gets solved without firepower. Then, a combat drone system in her suit activated. Several missiles were fired into the night sky. Even with the attack, the girl stated that it still wasn't enough firepower. The group of henchmen advanced, running through the wasteland amidst the debris. The leader shouted that they needed to eliminate the sniper on the hill as quickly as possible and to watch out for an attack. One of the men in heavy armor looked up at the sky, not understanding the warning. In that same instant, a beam of energy hit him squarely and made him explode, while another henchman was targeted in the background. One of the women in the gang then screamed to the boss that Kongzi's head had been blown off. She then identified the weapon as a sniper rifle and ordered them to find the source of the shots. A moment later, the woman was also hit by another energy beam that disintegrated her instantly. The group leader cursed as he saw another of his members eliminated in that way. Looking towards the hill, he tried to understand what the hell was attacking them. The answer came when he spotted Shen Jiamei with a levitation cannon and drones floating around her. One of the levitation drones began to charge its energy for another shot. The man then despaired as he realized that such a weapon had been sold to a private individual. With a confident smile, the girl prepared for the next attack. The gang leader could only scream at what was to come. The drones in the sky glowed brightly before firing together. With one last curse, the remaining henchmen were engulfed by a massive beam of energy. Shen Jiamei then smiled and said she knew her sister was right all along. Back at Linjiang base, the night went on as usual amidst the city lights. In an alley, the informant lit his pipe to smoke peacefully. He took a long drag and slowly let the smoke out. Suddenly, a figure approached and asked what a snakehead was doing there. The man accused him of selling the information about the rich kid and asked about Tigra's story. He then revealed he'd heard Tigra was a slave trader from the South District. The informant confirmed the South District's reputation came from kidnapping and slavery, but he didn't risk getting into that kind of business. With a smile, he explained it would be a waste to die when you could use the supplies to have fun. Meanwhile, on the road, Tigre was getting up amidst the fire and his fallen men. He realized a large crowd was approaching for a fight. Soon, Shen Jiawen charged forward at high speed and leaped over the remaining henchmen. With that, Tigre concluded that the two flowers from the west side were no ordinary opponents. With a smile, the warrior said it had been a long day of ambushes and that it was time to play, showing why she was known as the King of Flowers. Shen Jiawen started the attack with two quick, accurate shots. Next, she eliminated two more henchmen, counting each target. With a spin in the air, the warrior dodged the bullets and cut down another enemy on the ground. She continued the move, dodging projectiles while counting the sixth. As soon as a henchman fired, she landed and took out 2 more before they could react. At this, Tigre yelled for his men to kill her the moment she touched the ground. The combatant then activated the double jump system in her boots. A propulsion system then launched her high into the air, far from the enemy's reach. One of the henchmen yelled in surprise, seeing her jump in mid-air. At the peak of her jump, she aimed her weapon downward. Shen Jiawen then landed with a heavy impact right in front of a masked henchman. The man only managed to curse at her before the direct confrontation. With a swift move, she blocked the blade of an enemy who tried to attack her. Immediately after, she pierced the other henchman's mask with her gun. To finish, she leaped and struck the last man standing, completing the count of 9. One of the survivors screamed in terror at the scene, while a voice commented that it was a good warm-up. The brutality of the fight left Song Chao paralyzed, while Shen Jiawen said she hadn't thanked them for being there yet. Hearing the taunt, Tigre's eyes filled with fury. The woman then thanked them all for helping her test her new combat gear. With blood running down her face, she finished by saying they all did a good job. The story then flashed back to 30 minutes before the confrontation. At that moment, Song Chao asked if someone was waiting for them on the road ahead. As a message came in, the older brother concluded they would be a target, and his sister suggested her plan of attack. With a smile, Jiamei agreed with the long-range cover strategy. Jiwen then told the young master to stay with her companion, as she couldn't count on his fighting skills. The plan was to use the car as bait to draw the ambush's fire and catch them by surprise. Still not understanding, the young man asked if that was really necessary and suggested a detour. At that instant, the woman asked him what he was talking about. Pointing a finger, the strategist made him listen. The bandits were there to rob him. Their intention was to take his property, sell his flesh, enslave his soul, and take his life. Given this, the woman asked if it was really necessary to kill the scum who wanted to rob, enslave, and kill him. The logical conclusion, she said, was that the only choice was to eliminate them. Back in the present, the fight continued with Jia Wen blocking a blow and kicking an enemy. Surrounded by several opponents, the combatant moved with agility as she fired. Her shots continued in rapid succession against the remaining henchmen. One of them fired several times but complained when he saw the bullets couldn't get through her armor. Meanwhile, the young woman dodged the projectiles with a slide across the ground amidst the shootout. She then took cover behind a rock to escape the enemy fire. Noticing her gun was out of ammo, she just sat down and wondered if she wasn't being a little dramatic. Just then, a henchman in heavy armor pushed his comrade aside and shouted for him to get out of the way. He then aimed a large cannon in her direction and roared for her to go to hell. The strategist's expression changed as she sensed the approaching danger. Almost simultaneously, another man with a heavy machine gun began to fire, creating a curtain of fire. With that, the rock she was using for cover was hit by a massive explosion. Cursing, the young woman shielded her face from the debris flying everywhere. In the middle of the attack, she activated a kinetic shield to defend herself. The energy field then blocked the barrage of shots coming her way. One of the bandits laughed, believing she was dead, as a huge explosion went off behind the shield. After the detonation, one of the men declared that the job was finally done. The group's leader, in turn, ordered them to go find her body in the smoke. Suddenly, a beam of light struck the armored henchman square in the chest. The attack completely disintegrated him before he could even scream. From a distance, Jiamei reminded them not to forget about the long-range cannon. With a smile, Jiawen praised her sister for the great teamwork. Finally, the warrior emerged from the smoke and began firing at the remaining henchmen. Just then, one of the last henchmen screamed in pain as he was hit by a shot. Another man cursed when he saw his gun couldn't hit her through the shield. Amidst the fire, Tigre also swore as he noticed his men were being defeated. With that, the leader shouted for her to go to hell and fired his weapon at his opponent. The projectiles flew at high speed, but the combatant managed to dodge in time. Next, a targeting system activated on her visor to track the enemy's attack. With an acrobatic leap, the warrior dodged the shots and landed on the ground. Seeing the scene, Jiamei screamed her sister's name in complete desperation. For his part, Song Chao also reacted in fear, stating that it wasn't possible. Tigre then let out a sigh of relief and began to laugh at the situation. However, Jiawen used the momentum to spin in the air as the enemy shouted her name. Soon after, she landed, sliding across the ground to block her opponent's armed arm. She then fired her gun at point-blank range directly into his arm. The leader was shocked, not understanding how it was possible. Without hesitation, the young woman kept firing several times into her opponent's arm. As one of the henchmen yelled for Tigre to get down, another gang member was hit by a shot. With her helmet activated, the warrior aimed her weapon after wounding the enemy. Then, she turned and asked if their boss's name was really Tigre. While the man was down, he was taunted not to be shy and fight back. One of the bandits looked in terror at his fallen brother, not understanding the situation. With an even bigger gun in hand, the combatant called for whoever was hiding to come out and play. She then asked if they weren't going to try to rob them anymore, since they wouldn't gain anything by hiding. At this, the woman beside Tigre told him to leave, stating that they weren't fat sheep. Realizing they had fallen into a trap, the two fled, concluding it was a wolf in sheep's clothing. And so, after the escape, the battlefield was left covered in fire and the bodies of the defeated henchmen. None of the men who stayed to fight survived the confrontation. With her weapon in hand, the fighter watched the horizon, wondering if the others had fled as her helmet scanned the area. Soon, a voice called out to her in the silence. It was Jiame, running towards her with Song Chao right behind. With a smile, the warrior turned to answer her younger sister's call. Suddenly, she fell backward, collapsing into her companion's arms. Seeing this, the young man approached and asked what was wrong. That's when the young woman noticed her sister's armor had been pierced by special bullets. The projectile had gone straight through her protection, and they were lucky the rest of the enemies had fled. Even wounded, Jiawen suggested they return to Linjiang first. Back at the base, she asked to be taken to Dr. Shu. Soon, a woman in a lab coat appeared. She was the right person to handle this injury. Inside the operating room, the doctor remarked that this was a rare sight. She went on, saying the patient had her moments of weakness too. The doctor then teased that it was the first time she'd seen her in the hospital for miscalculating her shield's strength. With a wry smile, Xu Jing from the Linjiang Base Private Hospital said she almost laughed at the situation. Lying on the gurney, the fighter just told the professional to shut up. The doctor then asked who would have ammunition capable of piercing level 2 armor, and the patient replied it was just bad luck. Next, the doctor asked if it was true she'd fallen for some rich, stupid man. Jia Wen admitted there was no point in denying it, and asked about the others. The professional reassured her about her sister, but said the young man seemed more interested in the capsules. Apparently, he had never had a body enhancement, and everything seemed new to him. With that, the wounded woman wondered who the hell that kid was. With a smile, she just replied that nobody knew the truth. Soon after, Xu Jing suggested she should have bought a rechargeable battery or a shield module for the new equipment. Embarrassed, the patient just watched as the surgical instruments were being prepared. A little later, the doctor asked if she wanted anesthesia, but the woman, groaning in pain, said maybe not. Despite the pain, Jia Wen refused the anesthesia, explaining that it takes too long to get the feeling back. She added that a big show was about to happen, and she didn't want to miss the chance to watch. The doctor just listened to her reasoning and prepared for the procedure. Soon after, Xu Jing scolded her, warning that she was going to take the bullet out, but she would need to rest for 2 hours to recover. The doctor then called the patient's name when she realized she wasn't paying attention. With a distant look, the warrior could only manage a vague, nonsensical reply. At that, mechanical arms emerged to restrain her, while the doctor yelled that she couldn't be thinking about food. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a bar was completely empty and silent. Suddenly, Tiger was thrown hard onto a table, shattering it on impact. Right after, Jime rushed to his side while their other companion watched the scene. With that, she ordered the man to get help and meds immediately. The young man then ran to the back, yelling that the med kit was there and asking where everyone was. At the same time, the young woman tried to calm Tiger, telling him to hang on, that the medicine would be there soon. Wounded on the floor, the leader could only grumble that they were idiots. Just then, a figure approached and asked if they couldn't see what was wrong. In the distance, the companion realized there were no more caretakers at the base. Jia Mei then turned her head toward the voice, trying to understand the situation. The mysterious person revealed that everyone there was an intruder as he pointed a gun at them. Right after, the young man found himself facing one of the intruders in a white protective suit. Suddenly, several figures in identical suits appeared, surrounding Jime and the wounded Tiger. One of the intruders grabbed the woman by her hair and slammed her face hard against the floor. Even while restrained, she kept screaming her ally's name, but was ordered to shut up. With difficulty, the injured man turned to the main figure and asked what this was all about. Finally, a man with a pipe revealed himself in front of a doorway, accompanied by more guards. And so, Tiger and his companions were completely surrounded by the group of intruders. Even as a captive, he questioned why the man was in his territory and what his intentions were. The group's leader just stared at him with a mocking smile. A moment later, he knelt down and told Tiger not to worry about the situation. He then moved closer, stating he could explain everything that was happening. With one finger raised, the intruder declared that it could all be summed up in a single sentence. With that, he revealed that the big problem was that they went after Shen Jiawen. The revelation left Tiger and his companion completely stunned. Outraged, the young man accused him of giving them the information, but the leader just replied mockingly. As soon as the man started yelling about how many of his group had died, a guard pointed a gun at his head. Without any warning, the guard fired point blank. The sudden execution left Tiger and Jimei in a state of complete shock. The leader then apologized, saying he was just helping discipline his subordinate for interrupting their conversation. In a last-ditch effort, Tiger threatened him, warning that the lone wolf, chief of the South District, wouldn't let him get away with this. The man then seemed to recall the name, acknowledging that he was the chief of the South District. He then explained that because they touched Jiawen, the other 3 chiefs of Linjiang Base were now demanding an explanation from the South District. Hearing that, Tiger could only mutter a single word. Right after, the intruder revealed that the lone wolf was dipped in cement and had died. The man continued, explaining that since some didn't find that sufficient, they asked the Hell King's men to help carry their things. Resting his hand on Jiamei's head, he declared to Tiger that the situation was difficult for him too. Then, the leader taunted him to look at what he had become. Clasping his hands together, the intruder suggested he send Tiger to the heavens to help his brother. Then, he made the final proposal for Tiger to transfer all his credits and properties to them. And so, in a laboratory, a complex DNA strand floated in an aqueous environment. With a fixed gaze, Song Chao carefully watched the scene before him. Soon after, he approached a large glass capsule where a fluid was bubbling. Just then, a voice commented that he seemed interested in the enhancement fluid. A moment later, Xu Jing appeared by his side and watched him for a second. The young man then asked if Jiawen was okay, but the doctor reassured him, saying that Jiamei was already taking care of her. Upon hearing the news, Chao showed a brief sense of relief. With that, an older scientist asked if he would like to try the genetic enhancement. The boy turned his head toward the voice. Without hesitation, he asked how much the procedure cost. The doctor replied that it was 800 credits with an installment plan, which made the young man think the price was a bit steep. The researcher scolded him, saying he seemed to have misunderstood something about the enhancement drug. He then explained that, thanks to this invention, it was possible to survive the mutant creatures and improve the body's abilities. As the young man listened, the man concluded that its true value was the foundation of survival and the dignity of life. Finally, he showed an image of a chained person and asked if the young man still thought the price was high. Moments later, Chao was already floating inside the capsule, while the scientist congratulated Xu Jing for selling the product at a 500% profit. The doctor then commented that he had never seen a genetic drug before, making the overpriced sale a basic operation. Right after, as he walked away, the researcher asked if Jiawen was still resting. The small floating robot next to Xu Jing began to process the requested information. Suddenly, the drone reported that the patient had left a letter and fled, causing the doctor to simply say she already knew. The message left by the warrior simply apologized for the rush and promised to pay next time. To this, Xu Jing just stated that she needed to learn a lesson. That same night, on a city street, the group's leader was bragging about what common people were like. As he walked, he celebrated being very happy with that day's results. One of his subordinates then approached and called him boss. The man asked if it was really safe to leave Brother Tiger alive. The pipe smoker just questioned his companion's concern. With a laugh, he explained that all of Tiger's men and suppliers were gone. The former leader was now completely alone and powerless. Soon after, he revealed they were just helping Ge Kuo collect a debt. While holding his pipe, he stated that the big shots' feuds weren't their problem, as they were only hired to lead the way. Suddenly, a voice interrupted him and asked if whoever hired him also asked for a company account. Surprised, he turned around, trying to see who was speaking. As the figure approached, she accused him of leading a group to her home for an ambush. Shen Jiawen then revealed herself, explaining that after the winner is decided, they take people to raid the loser's house. With a smile, she pressed the man, asking if, as an honest businessman, he had nothing to say. The boss could only mutter an insult as he realized the trap. Still, he greeted the newcomer, mentioning he'd heard about her injury, but Jia Wen just replied that thanks to him, she wasn't dead yet. Next, he reminded her that he told her about the fight, but she retorted that he failed to mention the armor-piercing bullets. Soon, the two of them started laughing at the situation. The shared laughter continued for another moment. With that, the man's expression changed, and he asked what she wanted, telling her to give him her next order. The young woman then told him to relax, stating she just wanted to settle the score and discuss business. But the subordinate questioned if she really wanted to do business with an intelligence group like theirs. Then the leader commented they didn't have much work, and the other guy confirmed they really didn't. With a smile, the man said the visitor was always welcome to buy information and told his guys to listen up. Suddenly, the young woman grabbed him by the head, saying this was a good business opportunity. As she pressed down, the woman questioned him, asking if it wasn't true. The leader then asked what she meant by that. She then revealed her phishing plan, in which he would spread information to deceive people with bad intentions. Thus, the strategy was to lure the targets into a trap. Afterward, the woman explained she would kill the enemies, confiscate their assets, and sell what was left at a discount, splitting the profits with them. But the man expressed his concern, saying that people like King Jiaowang would surely try to come after them. Still, the subordinate tried to argue, pointing out they were just an intelligence group. Therefore, the visitor ordered that if he couldn't decide, he should go back and consult his bosses. Right after, she warned him that any future intelligence mistake would result in a deduction from his share. At that moment, the boss recognized the anonymous credit card where Tiger's funds had been transferred and began to scream. Desperate, he touched his neck and realized when the collar had been placed on him. The leader quickly apologized and accepted the offer, leading the young woman to say she would forgive him. With the card in hand, she advised him to be a good boy and stated she was eagerly looking forward to working together. As she walked away, the subordinate questioned why his boss didn't stop her. The young man insisted on knowing the reason for his superior's inaction. Then the boss revealed they weren't alone, as several armed figures had suddenly appeared in the alley. Next, the leader told his young companion that he had already warned him not to underestimate these people. Still, the subordinate tried to understand why the visitor would come all the way there just to blackmail them. Meanwhile, the young man's visor detected the presence of someone else approaching. Far away, on a rooftop, another figure suddenly sneezed. Sitting atop a building with a weapon, she just wondered if she had caught a cold. Back in the laboratory, the young man felt his body sinking into a deep sea as two beams of light appeared in the distance. Slowly, he opened his eyes and realized that the brightness he saw was actually the ceiling of the room. He soon covered his face with his hand as he slowly awoke from the procedure. Next, he sat up in bed and looked around the room full of medical equipment. With a hand on his chin, he wondered if the enhancement was already finished. Looking at himself, he noticed he seemed stronger than before. Right after, he called out to see if anyone was around and lifted the blanket. Then a woman entered the room holding a tray but stopped when she saw the scene. With that, she asked what he was doing. She then said goodbye and told him to clean himself up, but the young man tried to stop her from leaving. Nearby, Jing laughed at the situation, commenting that it was the first time she'd seen someone worry about that part of their body upon waking up. Completely embarrassed, the young man covered his face and asked her to stop. At that moment, the doctor commented that since he didn't have enhancement drugs where he lived, she would give him some knowledge about them. While he was still covering himself, Jing explained that such drugs develop physical abilities, but that was just the basics. Finally, she detailed that the enhancement improved vision, smell, taste, reaction speed, and muscle strength. Continuing, the doctor revealed that higher-level enhancements made the body indestructible and capable of fighting mutants. With that, she concluded that the final stage was power enhancement. Right after, Jing told the young man that he didn't need to know about those things for now. To finish, the doctor advised him to simply run if he was unlucky enough to encounter someone with that level of enhancement. And so, the young man understood just how dangerous they could be. At that moment, the two sisters, Shen Jiawen and Shen Jiamei, entered the room, and the atmosphere fell completely silent. The pink-haired woman then took a sip from her bottle. Next, she commented to Jing that no one had ever seen anything like this in Linjiang. The doctor just agreed, stating that was also true. Meanwhile, the young man scratched his head for a moment, processing the information. With that, he asked for the price of several drugs, explaining that he needed to buy many of the highest possible quality. As soon as the younger sister started to talk about the price, Jing cut her off with a jab and told her to be quiet. The girl slammed into a panel, pointing out that the medicine there was quite expensive. The doctor then explained that Linjiang was a small place, but if he wanted high-quality drugs, he would need to find 200 vials for her to sell. Inwardly, the doctor thought there were many things about killing him that she couldn't reveal. The boy then asked if those potions could actually be used. In response, she scolded him, clarifying that the strengthening drug needed to be adjusted before use. Understanding the situation, The young man could only manage to say a single word. He then questioned if there were any drugs that could be used directly. With that, Xu Jing commented that he really wouldn't give up on his idea. Next, the doctor proposed that she could order a batch of easy-to-use drugs that wouldn't cause any issues, but the price would be high. Without hesitation, the young man accepted the offer on the spot and asked her to place the order. At the price of 500 yuan, Xu Jing confirmed the deal, and he accepted with a smile. The young man then asked how much the top-tier drugs cost, but the doctor explained their exorbitant price was why they weren't available in Linjiang. He listened to the explanation with a serious expression. Finally, Shen Jiawin revealed that the starting price for the high-level liquid medicine was 10,000, and the power drug was at least 100,000. Shocked by the cost, the boy just stammered as the woman warned him not to even think about it because they couldn't afford it. After the group left, the lab corridor became empty and silent. As she walked away, Xu Jing asked about their next plans and invited them to stay the night, reminding them they had to pay. The pink-haired woman then joked that since they were basically family, the rent should be free. But the doctor retorted that she could keep dreaming. Next, the younger sister asked if the doctor stayed up late, and the professional replied that she needed to work overtime to pay for her meals. At the same time, the visitor just stretched silently. As for the young man, he remained in the same spot, lost in thought about their earlier conversation. Approaching him, the older sister questioned if he was still thinking about the strengthening drug, but the young man denied it. The woman just stared at him for a moment, not believing his answer. With that, Xu Jing asked her sister to go back with her first, telling the others they could do whatever they wanted. Right after, the other young woman turned to the boy and offered him some advice, asking if he was looking for high-level mutation agents. The question caught him completely by surprise. He then confirmed that he was looking for them, but no one was selling, which made the woman call him stupid before lying down. With a finger raised, she stated that if a market didn't exist, they could simply create one. The idea left the young man completely confused. Finally, she explained that all they needed was an organization big enough with territory, people, and weapons. With that, she concluded they would be able to buy anything they wanted. In a swift move, the young woman pressed him against the wall, startling him. She then explained that the more forces he had, the safer he would feel. Not knowing how to react, the young man just agreed with her statement. Soon after, he admitted he didn't know which organizations he could join there. Next, the woman cleared her throat to get his attention before speaking. With that, she proposed they do it together, since he had the money and she had the strength. So, the young man asked if she was really suggesting they should work together. Pinning him against the wall, the woman simply confirmed the proposal with a single word. He then summarized the deal, saying he would invest the money so she could help him expand their channels and buy the materials he wanted. His new partner agreed and explained that since he didn't know the place, he would need help to avoid getting ripped off. She then revealed that Linjiang was ruled by 4 leaders, but the one from the southern city had been silenced the day before. With that, she showed the tragic fate of those who had robbed them, who were brutally killed. The woman concluded that without a powerful force to protect him, events like yesterday's would happen again, but they could solve everything. After hearing her arguments, the young man admitted that what she said made sense. Eager for an answer, the pink-haired woman pressed him for a decision. He then questioned her about why she hadn't started her own organization before meeting him. Without waiting for a reply, he accused the two of them of using the money from selling food to buy more food, even with their old equipment. The young man reminded her that pollution-free food was expensive and that she refused to eat everything. He then made it clear that even if they cooperated, he wouldn't support her just so she could eat. Unable to deny it, the woman just laughed while holding signs that read, "Bankrupt" and "glutton." Soon after, her expression changed completely, and she stared at her partner seriously. After a brief moment of silence, the young man finally began to speak. With that, he stood up and announced he would support her in creating the team, which surprised her. He then demanded that she show her commitment and get him what he wanted, or he would withdraw his investment and go elsewhere. His partner just stared at him in silence for a moment. Soon after, a faint smile appeared on her lips. The woman then extended her hand and declared that the deal was closed. As they shook hands, the cooperation between the two was sealed. Afterward, she continued to smile at him. A moment later, her hand was extended toward him once more as an invitation. As they walked, the pink-haired woman announced she would first give them the big picture before they dealt with the local forces. She revealed that Linjiang was divided into 5 regions, with each of the 4 main ones having its own leaders and forces. To the east, the transportation hub housed the area's largest black market, led by a businessman who preferred money and information over fighting. The central region was dominated by the tech industry, with its leader being a military man nicknamed the General. Next, she explained that the south side was full of bandits, and that their boss, Lone Wolf, was no longer in charge. Shortly after, she mentioned the north side of the city, but hesitated for a moment. Curious, The young man asked what was wrong with that region. Seeing his insistence, she turned to finally answer his question. The woman then revealed that the northern part was a distribution hub for all sorts of bandits and mercenaries. According to her, the leader there was a king who had issues with them, so the best thing to do was to simply avoid that area. At this, the young man questioned what kind of introduction that was, embarrassing her with the question. He then asked if this meant that no one was in charge of the west side of the city. With a confident smile, the woman pointed to herself and declared that this was her territory. Surprised, he commented that everyone else had an army, while she only had 2 people, which left her shaken as she replied that there were historical reasons. To smooth things over, she coughed lightly to the side. She then began to explain that the area in the western suburbs had great development potential. She revealed the region was rich in resources and ancient ruins, where good things could be unearthed. The young man then asked about the downside, and she explained that the excess of monsters made development difficult, which led him to conclude that was why she was poor. With that, he asked why the others didn't just take the territory for themselves. The woman crossed her arms and reaffirmed with conviction that it was her territory. To top it off, she pointed to herself and repeated that this was her territory. The next day in the lab, Dr. Xu Jing started the conversation with the group. With an unfriendly expression, she asked if they were out of money. The young man just confirmed the situation with an awkward smile. Soon, the younger sister questioned if they would really work with Chao Gei, since he was super weak. At this, the pink-haired woman told her to be quiet, begging her to stop talking. Then the young man confronted the doctor, asking if she no longer wanted the box of medicine he had spent all night making. His partner then explained that the food they had bought with the credits was gone before they even arrived. The doctor just looked at the older sister and said the decision was up to her. The woman turned her head, trying to think of a solution. With that, the doctor proposed that if she acted as guarantor, she would accept an internal tab but would charge 20% interest on the debt. The partner complained about the rate, but Xu Jing threatened her, saying, "You get what you pay for." With no other choice, she agreed to take the deal. As soon as he got the items, the young man thanked her and promised to pay as soon as possible. Shortly after, the group said their goodbyes and left, while the youngest said she was going to bed. Finally, the scientist commented that he didn't think she'd be willing to give them credit. Then, they all walked in silence down the lab corridor. The doctor soon explained that old friends naturally get a discount out of consideration. Meanwhile, the yellow drone floated beside her. With that, she commented that the partner was planning to build her own team. The scientist then revealed he was tired of Lin Jiang's stagnant situation, and that it would be fun to shake things up. Finally, while hiding in the hallway, the doctor just muttered that she would regret this later. On a busy city street, the group observed the surrounding buildings. The pink-haired partner then turned to the young man and confirmed that they needed gold. She explained that she couldn't get supplies for free and would need to trade for them, which made Song Chao question the need for so much gold. The young man revealed that besides gold, art and antiques could also be used for trade. At this, the youngest asked why they needed such useless things. He just commented that the needs of a large base were surprising, and quoted a saying about how priorities change when you're well fed. The pink-haired woman showed her concern, saying that even if they found gold, 3 people couldn't carry much. He then suggested buying it from others in the western suburbs, but she quickly dismissed the idea of trading food for gold. After thinking for a moment, the partner stated that there was only one way to get what they needed. With a determined look, she just told him to come with her. Soon after, the group arrived at an alley in a rougher part of town. A man greeted them with a smile, saying it was a rare visit. He then commented that he didn't expect the twins from the west side to be minding their business, but was cut off when she declared she was getting straight to the point. Hearing the nickname, Song Chao whispered to the younger one, trying to understand the situation. The girl just shot him a look to keep him quiet. The group then looked down upon a bustling alley that served as a slave market. With that, the young man just stared at the scene in complete silence. His partner then approached the merchant and specified that she needed 12 people, 8 men, and 4 women, only skilled fighters. She then added to the request that he must also provide all the necessary equipment. Finally, the young man understood they were negotiating the purchase of human slaves. Moments later, a convoy of military vehicles moved through a wooded area. Inside one of them, a new recruit was explaining to a man that they had bought a group of slaves from the market. Immediately after, her companion added that those people would join Shen Jiawen's team as a reserve of members and labor. At this, a third person simply confirmed that was the plan. The young man watched the scene in silence from his seat. Soon after, he realized no one had spoken since they got in the vehicle. Silence filled the vehicle, while the youngest slept in the seat beside him. With that, he broke the quiet atmosphere by commenting on how quiet it was. His partner then explained that with life and death uncertain, it was natural for a slave not to be in the mood to talk. The young man remembered she hated slaves and questioned her about it. With a cold look, the woman confirmed that she she despised it in every sense of the word. The mood inside the vehicle grew heavy after her declaration as she kept her focus on driving. Everyone remained silent, just listening to the rumble of the engine. The young man looked away, not knowing how to react to the situation. To break the tension, she announced that they would go to the residential area to get what they needed and then free the slaves. Surprised, he commented that buying and freeing slaves didn't seem like something she would do. With a smile, his partner asked him what he meant and announced they had arrived at their destination. The vehicle then came to a stop in the middle of an abandoned construction site filled with debris. Therefore, the convoy's vehicles parked in a concrete courtyard surrounded by abandoned buildings. When the sharp-eyed young man questioned the location, the older sister explained that they had stored all the easily found gold from the nearby villages there. With that, her brother instructed them to move one load of gold first, as they would come back for the rest later. The woman then approached one of the military trucks. Soon after, she opened the transport vehicle's door. Holding the door, the commander ordered everyone to get out immediately. The new recruits looked out of the truck upon hearing the order. Then, everyone started to get down as the leader hurried them to get ready for work. She then ordered the men to get the boxes from the truck, and the other sister to take the women to pack everything, leaving nothing behind. The girl accepted the order with a smile. The leader turned to the young man and instructed him to first choose what he wanted to take. Watching the scene, one of them grumbled that the West Side twins were finally using human slaves too. A recruit then started asking a companion what the reward for the job would be. The other man just replied that they'd end up being used as labor anyway. He concluded that as long as they wore the bomb collars, they would be whatever the buyers wanted, even cannon fodder. Overhearing the conversation, the commander turned and asked if they thought she was talking nonsense. The man then confronted her directly, questioning if that wasn't exactly it. With a smile, the woman revealed their reward would be their freedom again, which left him in shock. The other recruits reacted with disbelief, asking if she was kidding. The commander confirmed it was no joke, and that besides their freedom, they would also get a job. With a smile, she reminded them there's no such thing as a free lunch. One of the men then asked what she wanted them to do, but the woman simply replied that he didn't need to know yet. Finally, she held out her hand, offering them a chance to try and see if what she said was true. So, as soon as they opened the boxes, the determined young man found several gold bars and thanked the commander for all the recovered material. In total, they had gathered nearly 50 pounds of gold, plus some gems and jade sculptures. The young man then informed them he would start with a 13-pound box, which would be enough to get many things in return. With that, he seemed to have an idea. Soon after, he turned to the group and asked if they'd like to eat something. The younger one then listed several items, while the older sister asked for mushrooms, vegetables, and bread. With a smile, the young man just said he would confirm their order. He then said he would write everything down and might take a while to get back, but the leader reassured him, saying she would take care of the team. As he lifted the box, he noticed it felt strangely light. While carrying the item, he thought about how future technology could make a lot of money with food deliveries. The commander just watched him in silence as he prepared to leave. The younger one asked if she should follow him, but her sister replied that as partners, they needed to respect each other's privacy and called her over to deliver the reward. The girl reacted with surprise upon hearing what her sister planned. Standing at the top of the stairs, the leader stated that you don't second-guess the people you hire, you just put them to work. Facing the recruits, one of the men asked if she would really give them their freedom. One of the female recruits then asked a companion if he believed everything she said. From the top of the stairs, the commander watched the group and ordered them all to come closer. With her finger raised, she asked for everyone's attention for what she was about to say. Right after, she revealed that their betrayal contract would also deactivate the bomb collars and that she would keep her promise. The recruits just listened in silence as she paused before continuing. With that, the commander announced she had a proposal to share with all of them. So, outside, the large mansion stood out amidst the abandoned landscape. One of the men then asked if the proposal was to create a regiment. As she walked down the stairs, the commander confirmed that was exactly the idea. With a smile, she commented that some of them must have already heard of the sisters' reputation. The recruits then recognized them as the sisters from the West District, known as Shen Jiawen and Shen Jiamei. One of them commented that they were rare celebrities who hated slaves, but followed the lone wolf doctrine. The woman then explained that she needed an army to expand her business, and that everyone there was talented. One of the men observed that even the non-combatants possessed special skills in their respective fields. One of the female recruits just watched the scene in silence. Pointing at the group, the leader concluded that she bought them to make a deal for their freedom and their careers. The man then understood the situation and the logic behind the proposal. With that, he argued that if they didn't agree, the collars wouldn't come off, and that this was just a change in phrasing. The mention of the collar made the other recruits visibly tense. The commander just stared at him with a smile and asked how he came to that conclusion. Then she laughed and stated that there was a limit to how much you could underestimate people. From the top of the stairs, the leader reminded everyone that her attitude towards human slaves was well known in Linjiang. Soon after, she activated a device in her hand to prove her point. With a smile, she stated that she wouldn't break her promise. Suddenly, one of the men's collars snapped open with a click. Right after, the object fell from his neck, letting out a little smoke. The unexpected action left the other recruits completely stunned by the situation. With that, the commander invited everyone to spend the night and think about the proposal, warning that they would be free to leave in the morning. To finish, she winked and said she was eagerly looking forward to hearing their answer. As soon as the woman left, one of the men questioned what else they could do. The group then discussed the situation, revealing they didn't want to follow in the sisters' footsteps, but they also didn't want to leave empty-handed. Later that night, in one of the mansion's rooms, all was silent. Soon after, one of the recruits snuck into the room where the commander was sleeping. He watched the leader resting soundly in her bed. Outside, a comrade asked how she was, and the man confirmed she was sleeping well. The other recruits then gathered, calling her a fool for buying slaves and remarking how the West Side twins didn't know what they were doing. One of them asked what they should do now, and another replied that they would tie them up. The group's leader revealed they would have to ask her where the weapons and supplies were. The three men then laughed together at the plan they had just made. Meanwhile, in another part of the house, a recruit grabbed one of the women as the younger one questioned what they were doing. The man justified himself, saying the brothers were grateful for their freedom and wanted to give her some life lessons in return. With a serious look, their chief asked if he was happy biting the hand that fed him. The recruit insisted he was just returning the favor, which left the young woman terrified. The leader just stared at him in silence, his expression unchanging. With that, he warned him not to do as he pleased with someone who didn't want to be with him, and the man agreed to the request. Finally, the recruit asked him to keep an eye on the others and simply not get in the way. He then continued his line of thought, stating that anyway. With a smile, he concluded that once they got the weapons, they could do whatever they wanted. Soon after, one of the men moved silently towards the main bedroom. Meanwhile, the commander continued to sleep soundly, unaware of their approach. One of the intruders then prepared to attack the woman with a club while she slept. Soon, the group of traitors surrounded the leader on the bed, declaring that this was their world now. Another man then raised a spiked club into the air. With all his might, he brought the weapon down toward the woman. The scene then ended with the motion of the final attack. At the moment of impact, the man celebrated the hit, but the blow passed right through the woman's body. Holding the club, he questioned the strange sensation of the attack. The traitor then realized something wasn't right. The club went straight through her image, which glitched like a hologram. Surprised, the man shouted when he realized it was a projection. The real commander then revealed herself at the head of the bed, as the group stared in shock at the deception. As soon as he sensed the danger, he yelled for everyone to get out, but was hit by a sudden attack. The traitor spat blood and fell to the floor, unable to finish his sentence. A voice then stated that he had been too slow. The other intruders backed away at the sight of their fallen comrade, while the leader called them idiots for killing and stealing like that. Sitting on a bookshelf, she held her weapon and commented that she almost fell asleep waiting for them. Meanwhile, in another room, one of the men was attacking the younger girl with a metal pipe. Before the blow could land, the girl caught the weapon with her hand. Even with all his strength, the man couldn't move the pipe an inch. The young woman then opened her eyes and asked if they couldn't be a little more decisive. With a snap of her fingers, she stated they were too slow. While one of the traitors laughed, another shouted, questioning the delay. Their leader then commented that it seemed they weren't very good at fighting. Threateningly, the man told him to keep laughing, because he would soon see the consequences. With a swift move, one of the women was brutally thrown to the ground. Walking across the stained floor, a voice narrated about the 20 slaves with guts but no brains. The commander added that they had acted stealthily behind her back. Next to the younger girl, she stated that at least she still had a few men she could use. The girl then kicked the team insignias that had fallen to the floor. The men looked at the objects on the floor in shock and asked what they were. One of them recognized the team markings from their capes. With a smile, their leader simply commented that it looked like it was all over. The commander simply agreed with his statement. With a snap of her fingers, she addressed everyone present. In a swift motion, a weapon was thrown toward the remaining traitors. With a smile, the woman announced it was time to move on to the prize and punishment part of the game. One of the recruits screamed in despair as a man stomped on the floor, breaking it. Immediately after, another traitor kicked a comrade and screamed about why this was happening. A voice then sneered, telling the little lambs to run. Weapon in hand, the person continued to hurry them along, telling them to run faster. The commander then revealed herself and warned them to run faster. With a smile, she taunted them, saying the big bad wolf would get them from behind. At that, one of the men readied himself to attack with a club. He then shouted for his comrades to act now. In a swift motion, the man charged forward and swung the club at her. The attack was blocked, leaving him completely stunned. He soon realized the club had been stopped by an energy emanating from her armor. In the blink of an eye, the woman simply began to ask a question. She then asked him if they had forgotten what body armor was. Without hesitation, the leader hit him with a shot from her weapon. At the last second, a small dart grazed past her. Outraged, the commander complained that she hadn't even given them weapons or armor, yet they still tried to kill her. The remaining recruits just watched her in silence. Their leader then asked if her reaction wasn't a bit of an overreaction. Hearing that, the woman just stared at him with a serious expression. She then explained that if she hadn't anticipated the situation, she would be the one on the ground, and they couldn't complain about being killed. The commander then concluded that everyone is responsible for their own decisions. At this, the man stated that if they were going to work together, he needed to understand how she did things. As the remaining traitors fled, a voice stated that one good turn deserves another. Right after, a headless body fell from the building, rolling across the ground. As the last traitor protected his partner, he was suddenly stabbed in the back. Then, from the balcony, Shen Jiawen appeared, aiming his weapon to finish the job. At the same time, further away, the other two traitors who escaped were trying to catch their breath amidst the rubble. However, the silence of the night was broken only by the dripping of blood onto the asphalt. The man remained standing while his companion bent over in exhaustion. Relieved, the female fugitive whispered to herself that she had finally managed to escape. She then wondered what the two of them should do now. Suddenly, her partner was attacked by mutants and screamed desperately for help. Meanwhile, the woman watched the scene, completely frozen. She then backed away, begging for help, screaming that she didn't want to die. As she turned, she saw a swarm of mutants approaching. Her eyes widened as she faced the threat rising before her. Then, a giant creature rose up over her, blocking the moonlight. All she could do was let out a final, terrified scream. The beast opened its maw to devour her, as the victim could only whisper one last prayer. At the same time, hiding nearby, two other traitors watched the scene unfold from a distance. They both crouched behind a barrier to avoid being seen by the monsters. Just then, one of them recognized the creature approaching in the middle of the horde. It was soon revealed to be a demon devourer leading the attack. Finally, the monster's eyes glowed brightly in the dark of night. From a vantage point, a man commented to Shen Jiawen on the incredible number of mutants gathered there. Shen Jiawen simply gave a faint smile at his comment. Soon after, the horde of mutants turned their backs and began to walk away down the street. Surprised, the traitors wondered if the creatures were really leaving. Then, one of them turned to the group and said that if they had left earlier, they would have had to face all those monsters. At that moment, one of the women in the group reacted with a shocked expression. Not understanding the situation, the men just looked at each other. With her face covered, another member whispered that it wasn't possible. Hearing these comments, the young warrior held back her laughter. With an air of superiority, she assured them not to worry, as the local mutants had an agreement with the residents. Right after, the man asked if it was just a coincidence that the monsters devoured the traitors she kicked out. Laughing, the woman asked what else it could be. Then, her gaze turned serious, as she asked if he was suggesting she could control the monsters. Casually, she added that even the wildest dreams have their limits. The man then commented that the tactic of using one to scare the others worked very well. Stepping forward, the strategist began to leave as one of the traitors nervously agreed. With a wink, she said she hoped to get more advice from him in the future. Finally, she walked away down the destroyed street and welcomed the new member to her crew. Meanwhile, in a completely different place, a beam of light appeared in the middle of a lush green field. With a distorting sound, the light intensified, heralding someone's arrival. Soon after, Song Chao materialized on the spot and took his first step into that world. He then walked through the grass in his metal boots and approached a house. Carrying a large box on his back, he sighed in relief, glad to have finally arrived. Looking around, he realized he had returned home. He then considered that showing up in the backyard in that outfit could cause him trouble. Thoughtfully, he concluded he needed to find a way to hide it all. Decided, he figured the best option was to change his clothes first. As he approached the door, he heard his father ask if that was a new medicine. Sitting in a chair, the man asked if it was the medicine for his lungs. At that moment, Song Wangxian looked at his son and asked if everything was all right. Now in casual clothes, the young man explained it was a new medicine from the company where he worked. He then showed the device and claimed that if there were no issues, they would soon be rich. Suspicious, his father simply asked if he was being used as a guinea pig. The young man replied that he would never do that, explaining the medicine was expensive and this was the only way to get it. Next, he applied the device to his father's arm, hoping the medicine would cure his lungs. A moment later, Song Wengxian clenched his fist and joked that he felt like Superman. His son watched the reaction silently and attentively. With that, the man warned him not to meddle in his affairs, but advised him to never betray his own conscience. The young man just held back a smile as he processed the advice he received. Finally, he turned to leave, and assuring his father not to worry, said he was going back to work. Soon after, Song Chao headed to a shopping street and stopped in front of an antique shop. On the facade, the shop's sign stood out on the building. Inside the shop, the young man opened a briefcase, revealing 6 gold bars. The shop's owner, Chief Zhou, was surprised to see the contents of the briefcase. With that, the visitor asked him to calculate the price for a total of 6 kilograms of gold. The dealer then picked up one of the bars to inspect it closely. After a brief inspection, his expression turned serious and suspicious. At that moment, Chief Zhou asked if the young man had done something with those gold bars. Confused, he replied that he had brought them straight to the shop. The merchant considered that, although the gold had no serial code, the young man didn't seem to be lying. Decided, he closed the briefcase and said he would take all the bars. He then informed him he could only pay 250 yuan per gram, prompting Song Chao to question why. The shop owner explained he was just helping collect the gold for an advance payment. Soon after, he confirmed the payment via a transfer on his cell phone. As he looked at the screen, the young man concluded that next time, he would focus on reselling works of art. Suddenly, he remembered something he needed to do. The young man then turned and asked Chief Zhou where he could find a car dealership. The dealer replied that since the city was small, he could recommend a good place. With that, he handed over a card for the shop where he had bought his own car. He then suggested that the visitor go to the place to take a look. As soon as the young man left, the merchant sent a message asking a contact if there had been any recent robberies. Alone, he reflected that there was no record of the crime, nor any way to trace the origin of that gold. Leaning back in his chair, he admitted to himself that doing business with Song Chao was stressful. Finally, he decided he wouldn't get involved in a transaction like that again. Arriving at the dealership, the traveler entered the showroom and greeted them. Right after, he stated directly that he wanted to buy a car. At that moment, a salesperson approached and offered to show him the models. With that, sales manager Chen Jia formally introduced herself to the client. The vehicle tour began with a white SUV. Next, they passed by a luxury convertible model. A golden sports car was also on display in the main showroom. The manager then explained they had the most complete lineup and asked what his budget was. Song Chao thought for a moment before answering the question. Soon after, he stated that his initial budget was 1 million yuan, which shocked the salesperson. Not understanding the reaction, he asked what was wrong, but she nervously denied anything was. The manager then tried to compose herself and hide her surprise. Once recovered, she asked if he had any specific model in mind. At that moment, the young man's phone started vibrating in his pants pocket. With that, he excused himself for a second and answered the call. On the other end of the line, an unknown voice asked if they were speaking with Song Chao. He then confirmed his identity and asked who was calling. Shu Chu's best friends introduced themselves and explained they needed to tell him something. After hearing what they had to say, his expression changed completely. In a serious tone, the young man thanked them for the information and said he understood. As soon as the call ended, he put his phone back in his pocket. The manager then approached, and he turned to speak directly to her. Urgently, he asked if there was any car that could be fueled up and taken right away. Immediately after, a white SUV sped out of the dealership. The vehicle made a sharp turn, its tires screeching on the asphalt. Accelerating even more, the car disappeared over the city's horizon. With his hands firm on the steering wheel, he focused entirely on the road. As he drove, the young man muttered Shu Shu's name out loud. On the other end of the line, Zhao Yu explained that a rich man with a bad reputation was pursuing Shu Shu, but she rejected him. She then revealed that the guy offered her money to go to a karaoke bar, asking her not to tell her family. Hearing this, Song Chao gritted his teeth as his friend admitted she found the situation inappropriate. Already in the car, he immediately asked Zhao Yu if she knew where they had gone. As soon as he got the answer, the car sped up, taking a sharp turn at high speed. With a determined expression, the driver kept his focus on the road ahead. Shortly after, he pulled up in front of the Heaven and Earth karaoke building. Upon entering the place, the receptionists welcomed him at the front desk. Soon, one of the employees tried to get his attention, pointing in his direction. Paying no mind, the young man simply vaulted over the counter as the receptionist told him to stop. He then ran down the hallway, ignoring their pleas for him not to barge in like that. As he moved forward, his eyes darted from side to side. His search led him to stop in front of a specific door in the hallway. Without hesitation, he threw the door open, yelling the name Song Wangxiu. Inside, a burly man was holding the girl by her arms. Surprised, the young woman recognized him and called out, "Brother!" At this, his hand trembled on the wooden door as he began to question her. He then demanded an explanation for what was happening there. The view widened, revealing the luxurious interior of the karaoke room. Inside, several men stared at him, scattered across the couches. The guy who had been holding the girl turned around and asked who he was. Next, Song Wangxiu also wanted to know what her brother was doing there. With a smile, the aggressor snapped his fingers and called him brother-in-law. The young man stared at him upon hearing he had arrived just in time. The man then ordered him to stand still and watch as they taught his sister a lesson. With his back turned, the young man repeated the word brother-in-law with disdain. Immediately, his sister screamed for him to run and call the police. Then, one of the men advanced with a smile, telling him to stay put so he wouldn't have to chase him. Before the goon could react, a fist shot toward his face. In an instant, Song Chao landed a direct hit that sent him flying to the floor. The attacker was left lying on the carpet with a bruised face. The scene left both the group's leader and Song Wangxiu completely stunned. Right after, the other two henchmen rushed to attack him at the same time. As he watched them, the young man noticed their movements were very slow. He even began to wonder if these guys were just messing around. Taking advantage of one of the many openings, he landed a punch on the first opponent's face. He then knocked out the second man, questioning if this was the power of genetic modification. Leaving the two on the floor, he turned and briefly apologized. With an aura forming around him, he faced the leader and asked what he had said earlier. As night fell, the scene shifted to a quiet city street. Outside, Song Wangxiu watched her brother, who seemed to be processing what had happened. As they walked, he called her Comrade Song Wangxiu, and she responded by asking what was wrong. In a flashback, the young woman questioned when he had become such a good fighter, able to take down 6 men. Right after, she held up a recorder, and the young man asked why she brought it, thinking she was on their side. Back in the present, the girl justified herself by saying she needed to protect herself, but he retorted that she shouldn't have gone. At this, his sister was shocked when he asked if she really wasn't there to play house. Turning her face away, his sister tried to justify herself, saying that wasn't her intention, but he insisted she face him directly. Faced with this, she finally admitted that she had actually planned to get together with the man when she agreed to go there. The confession left Song Chao completely stunned. She then explained that she made this decision because their family was in debt, and she wasn't so young anymore. With a faint smile, she added that since she wasn't ugly, she wouldn't be at a disadvantage. She then said that this way, he wouldn't have to worry anymore and could go back to college. The young man remained silent for a few moments. Then, he asked if that man would have become his brother-in-law if he hadn't shown up. With a serious expression, her brother assured her that this would definitely not happen again. Holding the recorder, his sister asked if the men would come after them because of it. Worried, he agreed that this was the only thing that wasn't certain. Scared, she ran to him asking what they should do, and he called her over to show her something. In a parking lot, he stated that to avoid retaliation, he now had power and money. Standing before several cars, he said that, as she could see, he had a lot of strength now. Standing in front of a white car, he explained that he had found a good part-time job, which got him money in the vehicle. In disbelief, his sister asked if that thing was a bus, while he promised to give their family the best life possible. With his hand on the car's hood, he affirmed they would no longer have to worry about money or depend on others. With determination, he declared that he would fulfill his promise to get them out of that situation. Immediately, the scene changed to a gateway opening in another location. Soon after, the image revealed a house with a courtyard in a rural setting. Once inside the new place, he announced that something important was about to happen. Beside him, his sister fearfully asked if the procedure would hurt. Assuring her it wouldn't hurt at all, he used an injector on her arm. As she watched the injection site, the young man explained that it was a medicine to strengthen the immune system. Suspicious, the girl immediately wanted to know if he had also used it on their father. Her brother confirmed, while taking another injector from a box. Gesturing, she questioned if this was a new type of immunity drug, and he replied that it was. His sister then assumed his company was a pharmaceutical one, but he clarified that this was a clinical trial for a drug he had developed. The revelation left her completely shocked once again. Next, she asked if he had used the drug on himself, and he simply replied that the technology was already mature. Closing the box, he explained that there weren't enough volunteers yet to test the drug and release it to the market. With the image of Shen Jiawen in his mind, he said he knew the company's owner, who was trustworthy and provided him with the car and a lot of money. He then confessed to his sister that, at first, he had the same fears as her, and thought about refusing. Soon after, he admitted that the offer he received was too good to ignore. Still, his sister came up behind him, warning that it would be better to be cautious. Just then, a message from his colleague Miao Qing arrived, and his sister looked at the screen with curiosity. The text was a class reunion invitation, but he recalled that the organizer wasn't a very pleasant person. Far away, in an office, Miao Qing herself was reading the invitation on her phone. With disdain, she wondered who would have time for that during such a busy period. Suddenly, the woman seemed to get an idea as she reconsidered the message. With a new expression, she paused and thought for a moment. Then she took off her glasses. Holding her phone, she decided she could use the reunion to recruit someone in an emergency. On the second day, Song Chao was seen inside the car again. Leaning on the steering wheel, he let out a tired sigh. The young man then muttered that he was still there. Back at home, he was looking at the reunion invitation on his phone once more. Beside him, his sister encouraged him to go meet his classmate. The girl watched him intently. Without taking his eyes off the screen, he refused, claiming that work was more important than social games. His sister scolded him, saying he was being close-minded. She then reminded him that many of their classmates were studying medicine. She suggested it would be a good opportunity to expand his network since his company was in the medical field. The young man reflected in silence, aware that he couldn't reveal the drug came from the future. After a sigh, he finally gave in and started to get ready to leave. While driving to the location, he admitted his sister's argument made sense. Leaning against his car in the parking lot, he decided he would try to get some sales contacts before heading home. At that moment, Miao Qing's figure appeared in the reflection of a nearby vehicle's window. Inside her car, she recognized him as she drove by. The driver asked what was wrong, but she just replied that it was nothing. Then, she got out of the car. She told the driver she would call when she was done, and he confirmed he would wait for her. Before walking away, she cast one last look back. Meanwhile, Song Chao waited alone inside the elevator. Unknowingly, they were both in the same building for the same event. As the scene shifted to the starry sky, he just hoped this wouldn't be a waste of time. In the party hall, a buffet was prepared to welcome the guests. Then, a man in a white suit appeared at the reception and invited everyone to come in. As soon as he spotted Song Chao, the host recognized him and approached. With a mocking smile, he commented that he still looked poor. Song Chao retorted with an ironic smile, saying his classmate was also still short as ever. While the host reacted angrily, another classmate arrived and greeted Song Chao. Soon after, an acquaintance hugged him and threatened a punishment with beer, but he explained that he was driving. From a distance, the man in the white suit scoffed, saying he was just pretending to have a good salary. Suddenly, the host's expression changed as he noticed a new arrival. The newcomer was Meng Yuezhou, whom he welcomed. The woman asked if the person who had just left was Song Chao, and the classmate started bad-mouthing him for being poor. Calmly, Meng Yuezhou reprimanded him, stating that it wasn't right to talk about others behind their backs. Embarrassed, the man just agreed and promised to pay more attention next time. Just then, another woman approached, calling for Meng Yuezhou, who turned to greet her. Her friend held her hand, saying everyone missed her, but Meng Yuezhou apologized for being busy. In the background, the host watched her with a malicious gaze. Soon after, the woman was introduced as the president of a tech company and the heiress of a large corporation. Hearing this, the man decided to use the party to try and take advantage of her. Later, Meng Yuezhou was holding a glass of wine. She then opened her eyes, looking thoughtful. Her friend then asked if she knew what Song Chao was doing, and the woman mentioned she'd heard he dropped out of school because he was poor. With a smile, her classmate teased her, asking if the princess of a large company liked poor boys, but she denied it. Meng Yuezhou remained silent for a few moments. With her back turned, she commented that she saw the car he was driving and pointed out that it was a very expensive model. Setting the topic aside, she preferred to focus on looking for promising talent during the event. So her friend suggested she ask the guys interested in scientific research about their experience in bio-research. Sitting at a table, a man dismissed the idea, stating there were no research internships available at the moment. Soon after, a blonde guy offered to ask a professor for her later. Meanwhile, Meng Yuezhou remained in the hall, surrounded by other guests. With a disheartened expression, the young woman just sighed. Leaning against a pillar, she wondered if she was being too greedy. Looking at her reflection, she considered that they hadn't even reached their senior year or written their thesis yet. Because of that, she wondered if she had been naive to think she would find someone to help. As she decided to grab a quick bite and leave, she heard someone shout Song Chao's name from across the room. The host was offering the young man a beer, insisting he drink and telling him not to lie about driving. Nearby, another man watched the scene with a lecherous look. The host then glanced in Meng Yuezhou's direction. At that moment, he thought he could show her his good side if he could just beat Song Chao. With that, the classmate insisted on the drink, but the young man paid him no mind. Just then, Another guest put an arm around his shoulders, offering to take him home since he was allergic to alcohol. Tired of the insistence, the young man scratched his head. He then took the glass of alcohol being offered to him. With no other choice, he agreed to have just one. The host smirked, revealing that he had spiked the drink to create a spectacle. With that, both men tipped their glasses back at the same time. The drink was chugged in a single gulp by both of them. While Song Chao finished calmly, the host started to feel sick. Shortly after, the man fell to the floor and began to vomit in the middle of the hall. Surprised, his classmate commented on his tolerance, and he attributed it to practice from his job. Even without understanding, he realized he wasn't drunk and questioned if it was the effect of the genetic drug. The scene then focused on the food and drink table at the party. With a red face, the host grumbled that it was unfair. A moment later, the man stood up, shouting that the situation wasn't fair. Soon after, he lunged at Song Chao, complaining that nobody liked him while his classmate tried to hold him back. Faced with this reaction, the young man couldn't understand what was happening. Confused, he asked his classmate if he had offended him, but the man just yelled about his attitude. While the aggressor screamed that he should humiliate himself, another guy grabbed him to take him away. With that, his friend told Song Chao to leave and go somewhere else. From a distance, Meng Weizhou watched the commotion with surprise. Beside her, her friend questioned what those guys were up to. The conversation then shifted, with the young woman wanting to know if she had found any candidates, but Yue Zhu said no. She then admitted she was getting a little desperate, and at that moment, her phone started to vibrate. Suddenly, she realized she was getting a call. Looking at the screen, she saw it was her father and wondered if something was wrong. She immediately excused herself from her friend and stepped away to answer. As soon as she picked up, she asked what had happened. On the other end of the line, her father asked her to find a quiet place. He then informed her he had something important to tell her, and the young woman headed to the women's restroom. Once inside, she agreed to listen. Leaning against the sink, she asked if something was wrong. Through the phone, her father told Yue Zhu to calm down and listen to him carefully. He then revealed that the company had decided to cut the research and development project she was leading. The scene then shifted to the inside of a restroom. Standing before the mirror, the woman received news that the board had decided to cancel her research project. She took a deep breath, trying to process the information. Sitting on the counter, she asked what was happening, but her father only confirmed what she had already heard. Over the phone, the man explained that the group's cash flow was in danger, and the lab's lack of results had created a lot of pressure. As she listened, she understood her father could no longer hold back the opinions of the rest of the board. She then remembered that research was the company's only way out, as only a large investment would give them a chance. Her voice strained. She yelled that she already knew everything he'd said. On the other end, her father simply replied that this time they had to give in. Looking out at the city, he added that reality was cruel and they needed to take care of their employees first. After hearing an apology, she remained seated on the counter, her head bowed. With teary eyes, she begged her father to give her just 3 more months. She then promised she would give the board an explanation about the experiments with the genetic repair drug. After a moment of silence, her father just replied that he understood. Leaving the restroom, Meng Weizhou stated she would do her best to resolve the situation. With a serious expression, the young woman left the venue after the call. As she passed, she didn't notice the movement at the door of the men's restroom next to hers. From inside, Song Chao slipped out discreetly, aware he shouldn't have overheard the conversation. Once in the hallway, he leaned against the wall and repeated the words genetic drug to himself. Still inside the restroom, he repeated the words genetic agents under his breath. With his hand on the sink, he remembered that Meng Weizhou's family group was in the pharmaceutical industry. He then connected the dots and realized the young woman was in trouble because of her genetic research. An idea began to form in his mind. With that, the young man considered a possibility. Peeking through the door, he considered the idea of trying to sell Dr. Shu's medicine to her. Determined, he returned to the party hall to try his luck. As he approached, he saw the drunk host confronting Meng Weizhou and her friend, who asked what was wrong. The man then yelled for the girl to drink the beverage he was offering. With an uncomfortable expression, she tried to refuse the glass. The colleague, however, pushed the drink toward her, telling her to stop messing around and drink up. The woman was surprised by his insistence. With a threatening look, the drunk man asked if she thought she was too good for his drink. With a clenched fist, the young woman showed her irritation with the scene. At that moment, Song Chao intervened and confronted him about the situation. The pink-haired friend yelled at the drunk to get a grip. At that, the other colleague told Miao Qing to shut up. The host then shouted for everyone to get out of his way, as he just wanted her to drink the wine. Already tired of the situation, Meng Weizhou's hand tightened into a fist. Just then, Song Chao touched her shoulder and called her class representative. She looked at him intently. Right after, he said he'd heard she was interested in genetic products. With his hand still on her shoulder, The young man asked if she would be so kind. Stepping away from the commotion, he gestured and invited her to talk in private. In front of everyone, he asked if he could talk to her about genetic products. The proposal left her visibly surprised. With a smile, he reiterated that he wanted to discuss her group's genetic product development project. Not knowing how to react, the young woman just watched him. Right after, she turned to her friend and announced she needed to discuss business with Song Chao. As she walked away, she said goodbye to her colleague, telling her she'd call later, leaving her behind. Her friend tried to call her back, but she couldn't. With that, the girl just watched in frustration as he led her away. In the background, the drunk host cursed at Song Chao for his interference. Already walking away, the young man commented on the strange obsession their colleague had with his financial status. Meanwhile, the man was still being held back by another guest. His face red, he yelled that Song Chao had stolen his chance to impress Meng Yuezhou. The aggressor then promised he wouldn't let him get away with it. Shortly after, the scene changed to the building's parking lot. The two walked side by side toward his car. As soon as they reached the parking lot, she thanked him for his help, and he looked at her, surprised. She acknowledged the fact that he had stepped up to help her. Then, she suggested he go back to the party, and said she was leaving anyway. The young man was confused, but insisted that he really wanted to talk to her. Faced with his insistence, she turned and asked what he wanted. He then revealed he worked for a company that already had samples of genetic agents and admitted to overhearing her call. At this, the young man asked if she'd be interested in a collaboration, but the young woman clenched her fist and asked him to repeat himself. Meng Yuezhou then said she was grateful for his help and wouldn't sue him for stealing trade secrets. Looking down on him, she told him not to belittle the work of others. Thanking him for his help, she asked him not to look down on biological research. Meanwhile, the two stood still, staring at each other from a distance in the parking lot. The young man looked at her, not understanding her reaction. Then he quickly gestured, trying to explain that wasn't his intention. Soon, the young woman began saying that genetic research requires cutting-edge labs that cost billions, and teams of scientists working day and night. Even so, she continued, with all that effort, often the result only proves the research path was a dead end. Furthermore, hundreds of millions are invested annually without any guarantee of reaching a result. This way, she confronted him directly about how he dared say a private lab achieved a product and still propose cooperation. At that moment, she watched him carefully before saying something. Then, gritting her teeth, she stated that looking down on others should have a limit. With a sharp gesture, the young woman turned around. Right after, she composed herself and apologized for losing control of her emotions for a moment. Anyway, she said that was it and turned to end the matter. Thus, turning her back, she thanked him for the proposal and said she'd get in touch if interested. At that moment, Song Chao shouted for her to wait, realizing something was wrong. Still, he tried to reach her while she got in the car without looking back. As soon as she sat down, she ordered the driver to leave immediately. After that, the car accelerated and left the parking lot. Watching the vehicle drive away, he just confirmed she had really left. Right after, the young man wondered why she reacted that way, since she didn't leave any contact or business card. Finally, bringing his hand to his head, he realized that was a clear sign she didn't believe him. The problem, however, was that he actually had the genuine product in his hands. The next day, in a new location, the story continued. Inside a hallway, a gentleman said he didn't expect to be sought out for that kind of matter, but the young man replied it was because he had many contacts. With a laugh, the man approached. Right after, he flipped a switch while praising the young man's way of speaking. Thus, the lights of a supermarket came on, and the gentleman said not to worry. Leading him inside the store, he stated he would help since they were friends. The establishment's shelves were completely full of products. At that instant, the young man looked around at all the available merchandise. The man then explained it was an old supermarket, large, fair-priced, with many things that could still be used. With a smile, he added the location was good, close to the city and countryside, with several supply channels. Facing the young man's reaction, he asked if the place met his requirements. Finally, he offered the spot for 500,000 and introductions to suppliers, which made the young man surprised at how cheap it was. With a laugh, the gentleman explained he wouldn't deceive him, since he still wanted him to sell him gold in the future. Right after, he asked him to give preference to him when selling gold, and the young man agreed there'd be no problem. Satisfied with the answer, the man turned and said he would go get the contract. While watching him, he found it strange the young man accepted without hesitation and didn't seem to be scheming anything. Stroking his beard, the gentleman then wondered where his gold came from, finding it all very interesting. Finally, the young man remained standing in the middle of the store, watching the man walk away. Suddenly, a voice from another room asked if they were talking about a supermarket. Thus, both looked to the side the moment the question was asked. Right after, the young man appeared and announced he would buy a supermarket, asking his father to manage it with capital a wealthy friend gave him. Furthermore, he added that since he couldn't help in other ways, He'd handle the tasks and bring good food to them as a gesture of consideration. Thoughtful, the father considered his body wouldn't handle the mind's heavy work for many more years. Finally, with a smile, he agreed to help his son take care of the store. In sequence, the scene changed to the supermarket completely stocked with goods. With clenched fist, the young man realized this way he could free his father from heavy work and have justification to buy supplies in bulk. Looking at the full shelves, he concluded it was time to return to the apocalypse. Soon, the supermarket was prepared, a car was parked outside, and the father began cleaning the place. At the end of cleaning, he sighed while observing the ready establishment. At that moment, his sister entered the supermarket carrying a box. As soon as she passed through the door, she greeted him. Holding the box, the young woman warned him the potatoes and cabbage he requested were already packed. Outside, near the car, the young man thanked her and asked her just to put the box on the ground. Right after, the girl questioned if there was no problem giving the vegetables to his boss, but he reassured her, saying it was a good gift. Then he changed the subject with a smile. In sequence, he commented she was quite strong to carry a box like that without getting tired, leaving her confused with the observation. Meanwhile, the sister commented the box full of vegetables didn't seem heavy at all. Dropping the box on the ground, she found it strange how her strength seemed to have increased in recent days. Right after, the young man observed his father's complexion had also improved, and his body was visibly recovering. With a slight smile, he realized how terrifying the effect of the genetic agent was, an essential item for survival in the apocalypse. Outside, father and sister watched him near the car. Already inside the vehicle, the man commented the company was very good to provide him a car of that level, but heard it was just a benefit. With a serious look, he advised his son to work hard not to embarrass him, since his friend treated him so well. Immediately, the young man readily agreed to his request. Driving away down the street, he said not to worry because he knew what he was doing. Through the rearview mirror, he saw the supermarket grow distant and concluded that was enough. Looking at the ring on his finger, he prepared to twist it and return to the apocalyptic world. Suddenly, a doubt arose in his mind. With his hand on the wheel, he questioned why he kept risking his life to return to that dangerous world. Right after, he thought if it would really make any difference if he didn't go. His gaze then became firm and determined. Meanwhile, the car continued in silence down the road for an instant. A slight smile appeared on his lips. With a laugh, he realized that way he'd become the type of person he hated most. Soon, he stated he wouldn't be the type of coward who takes what he needs and simply runs away. With that, he shouted Shen Jiawen's name and turned the ring on his finger. Immediately, a large beam of light descended from the heavens and enveloped the car. The vehicle began to float in the air, lifted by the light. Finally, in an instant, the car completely disappeared, leaving no traces. With a flash, sparks of energy appeared on the floor of a dark parking garage. Right after, the car suddenly materialized and landed with a strong impact. Inside the vehicle, the young man struggled to control the direction after the abrupt fall. Thus, the car skidded through the dark garage until he finally managed to stop. Leaning on the wheel to recover, he was surprised he managed to transport the entire vehicle. Even with the mishaps, he looked around and saw the plan had worked. Getting out of the car, he realized that would be a great help. Then he opened the trunk, concluding he could now carry much more things on his trips. While planning to put on his protective gear to find Shen Jiawen, a creature watched him from the ceiling. After all, that place wasn't safe like modern society. Therefore, he grabbed a piece of equipment, since he didn't want to be caught by surprise by a monster. Suddenly, a sound made him look up. Without hesitation, he turned to grab a weapon from inside the car. At the same instant, the creature leaped from the ceiling in his direction to attack. Fallen to the ground, he fired his weapon and sent the creature flying back with the impact. Right after, he leaned against the car to recover from the shock. Looking at the body sprawled on the ground, the young man questioned whether he'd actually killed it. While boasting about his talent with the gun, a shot from somewhere else hit the pillar beside him. Then, he observed the hole in the column and wondered if he'd really hit the monster. His expression changed as he realized the truth about the shot. At that moment, an armed man landed nearby and asked if he was okay. From above, the newcomer warned him not to wander around that area. Soon, he recognized the young man as the rear guard chief and wanted to know what he was doing there. With that, he decided that was enough for now. Next, he ordered the car and the rest of the supplies to be left behind. According to him, carrying too many items would affect their speed and increase the danger along the way. While listening in silence, the young man was already putting on his protective gear. As they crossed through the rubble, he asked if the car would be safe, and heard that mutants don't care about objects. The man then said he'd take him to meet the chief before fetching the rest, and he agreed. With one last look at the car, he departed with his companion. As they walked, the man commented it was the first time he'd seen a car without weapons or armor. Carrying the box, he added that bringing so many supplies made it obvious the chief valued him. At that moment, The young man asked if he was talking about him, and the other confirmed. Shortly after, he grumbled that it wasn't a chief position, but rather a way to keep him as a lackey. The man then warned it was good he'd come back, since they'd have to move in 2 days. Surprised by the news, he questioned what had happened. According to the explanation, he didn't know the details, but the chief had said the beast tide was starting. With that, hundreds of common and high-level mutants would emerge in a swarm. Even large and dangerous creatures like ghouls could appear during the attack. At that instant, the young man interrupted him, seeming overwhelmed with the information. Then, he asked if the plan was to abandon him there, but the man said they'd found him by chance while clearing the area of monsters. Ignoring the protest, he just pointed ahead and announced they'd arrived at their destination. Not understanding, the young man looked up and asked what he meant. Still, he kept looking up without reaction. From atop a pillar of rubble, a voice commented that she'd sent him to patrol, and he came back with a great gift. It was Shen Jiawen, watching him seated on top of the debris under the moonlight. With a smile, she greeted him and said he was welcome back. However, with a smile, Shen Jiawen offered to guide them. Soon, Song Chao promptly accepted, saying he couldn't ask for anything more, Chief. The man beside him then expressed his surprise at seeing him return along with her. While walking toward them, the young woman commented that, as always, he appeared at the most opportune moments. After that, she got straight to the point and asked what gift he'd brought her this time. With a smile, the young man replied that she'd have to wait and open the box to find out. His companion laughed and said the contents were so impressive that even he was shocked when he saw them. Winking, the young woman stated she'd wait with gratitude and anticipation. As they followed the path, she asked if it was true he'd created a company, but he clarified it was a battle group. Taking the opportunity, Song Chao questioned the story about him being the rear guard chief. She explained it was natural to occupy the executive position for getting the supplies, but he countered that he felt used like a pack mule. To provoke him, she revealed that Shen Jimei originally wanted to call the logistics team Team Leak, which left him indignant. Still curious, he asked what the official name of the battle group was. The man carrying the box just smiled with pride, without answering the question. Immediately, Shen Jiawen stared at him and asked if there was any problem with the name she'd chosen, making him deny it right away. Already tired of the situation, Song Chao insisted once more to know what the name was. Ignoring the question, the young woman pointed ahead and announced they'd arrived. Finally, as soon as they approached, Shen Jiamei appeared and celebrated her sister's return. As soon as she noticed who was accompanying her sister, Shen Jiamei showed surprise. With a welcoming shout, she ran toward Song Chao with open arms. The sudden approach left the young man uncomfortable. When he dodged to the side, the young woman stumbled and fell face first on the ground. Still down, she complained that his attitude had been very cruel. At that moment, Song Chao looked around, observing the people gathered there. It was the team formed by Shen Jiawen. He continued to analyze the other members of the group. Soon he realized the number of people had decreased since his departure. Then, Shen Jiawen offered to formally introduce him to her companions. Gathering everyone, she welcomed him back to the flower shop. One of the members grumbled the team's name under his breath. Another, in turn, smelled something coming from the pot. Next, the lid was removed, releasing the steam from the food. With a smile, Song Chao announced the meal was ready. Right after, he invited the group gathered at the table to start eating. The others tasted the food, commenting it was worth living to eat something so good. One of the girls then offered some to Rula, who showed she didn't want to accept. Thus, a drop of liquid fell on the table. With tears in his eyes, one of the men wondered if that was the true flavor of food. Shortly after, another group member slapped the young man on the back and promised he'd follow him wherever he commanded. Startled by the reaction, the young man tried to get away from the others. Meanwhile, seated at the table, Shen Jiawen ate calmly amid the confusion. Then, he settled beside her, and she greeted him. Next, the boy commented their reaction was exaggerated, but the young woman explained they'd never eaten that way before. Right after, he asked if he'd done something wrong, and the girl replied that a good meal helped raise the team's morale. With that, the young man mentioned hearing the mutants were acting strangely lately. Right away, Shen Jiawen confirmed the information was correct. Shortly after, she explained that was the calm before the storm, and the location wasn't safe. Since the mutants in packs weren't interested in supplies, the group usually took shelter at Linjiang Base before the beast tide. The sudden explanation left the young man not understanding the situation. Finally, she clarified they called the mass attacks of mutants beast tide. Pointing to the surroundings, the girl warned that in 2 days at most, a gigantic horde would swallow the place. With a determined look, She concluded that since he'd already arrived, there was no more reason to delay their departure. Shen Jiawen hesitates to say something, making Song Chao question what was going on. With the revelation, the younger sister gets excited about the idea of more supplies, much to everyone's surprise. Next, Le Jin explains he only managed to bring half the stuff since the rest was still in the vehicle. Hearing this, Shen Jiamei gets worked up and demands everyone hurry to recover the food and return to Linjiang base. Watching the scene, the older one comments on how transparent the girl was, loyal only to her own desires. With no other choice, she ends up agreeing with the plan to retrieve the materials. Immediately, the leader gestures to start organizing the team. Right after, she calls for Le Jin. Then she summons Ruila. Concluding the order, she points to a third member and tells the three to follow. The trio identifies themselves as the Feng Shizi squad. Finally, the last member of the group is introduced as Mai Jia. Completing the formation, a girl named Midiyu was introduced to the group. The youngest then winked and ordered the two new members to follow her. Together, they would form the firepower group, known as Sunflower. Meanwhile, the young man was instructed to lead the support group, Basil Leaf, guiding the vanguard from the rear. Totally surprised, the young man was left speechless, unable to respond to the order. Soon, a man approached so he could get familiar with his new teammates. The first member of the group kept his face completely covered by a white hood. The other member, in turn, revealed her face more shyly. With a friendly tone, the young woman asked everyone to get along well during the mission. Moments later, the squad's armored vehicle was already advancing through the city streets. The heavy truck sped down the asphalt at high speed. As they approached the destination, one of the men opened the side door and raised his weapon. With a battle cry, he announced to the monsters that he was already arriving for combat. However, Le Jin reprimands the noisy companion, saying it wasn't necessary to fight the mutants at that location. Ignoring the warning, the man treats the situation as good training for the team and seeks the leader's approval. Right away, Shen Jiawen warns him not to waste ammunition, threatening to deduct the waste from his food ration. Right after, she asks Song Chao through the communicator if the meeting point with Le Jin was the underground parking. After the young man confirms the location, the commander activates a command on the vehicle's panel. Then she instructs him to get along with the logistics team, since they'd be called when they reached the destination. Meanwhile, the young man silently observes his new companions. Not knowing how to act, he decides the first step would be to get to know the group better. With that, he breaks the silence by commenting that he still didn't know anyone's name there. Taking advantage of the moment, he suggests everyone introduce themselves since they'd be working together from that point on. The older man introduces himself as Fei Shui, a clerk specializing in planning. The hooded woman reveals herself as Dr. Ai Lina and asks them to guide her on the mission. Finally, the last girl introduces herself as Kei Li, the group's cook. At that moment, the young man explains he was working with Shen Jiawen, realizing his team consisted of a secretary, a doctor, and a cook. Immediately, he despairs upon noticing his support squad had no combat capability whatsoever. Suddenly, the vehicle brakes hard, making everyone fall while the leader questioned if Song Chao's car was really there. Le Jin confirms the location, even understanding the chief's hesitation given the situation. As soon as the truck stops, the commander calls the young man outside. Confused, he asks if they'd already reached the destination, receiving an affirmative answer. Outside, she informs him the plan would need to be changed. The boy is completely shocked by the scene. On top of a building, a humanoid creature was watching a small energy being. Nearby, a gigantic monster was devouring another one of those creatures. The enormous creature then sits down and observes the being it held in its hands. Facing the horde of monsters, Shen Jiawen explains that this was the beginning of the beast tide. She clarifies the enemies were only starting to gather, and the objective was to grab the cargo and the car before it was too late. Concluding the new strategy, the leader orders Shen Jiamei's squad to initiate the attack to open a path. Thus, Shen Jiamei accepts the order and prepares to exit the vehicle. Totally ready for combat, the young woman positions herself to initiate the attack. The group's first target was a tall, slender creature wandering down the street. Soon the monster turns its head toward the squad. Immediately, an energy projectile hits the creature dead on. The impact results in an explosion that destroys the target instantly. Celebrating the hit, the shooter confirms with her partner that the path was clear to advance. Next, the commander orders the Sunflower Squad to provide cover while she and another member advance. Then Le Jin and Ruila receive the mission to lure the monsters away from the main path. Finally, Song Chao is instructed to follow the leader and drive his own car, which leaves him totally stunned. The chief justifies that this was the fastest and safest plan since there was no time to waste. Before they could move, a fast mutant advances and the leader orders the escort group to intercept it. At that moment, a two-headed monster growled at the approaching group. Le Jin then shouted for the Sunflower Squad to continue with suppressive fire, while he and Ruila dealt with the surprise attacks. Immediately, a shadow passed by him, making him duck to dodge the attack. The creature's slash missed by inches, hitting only the ground. Right after, the warrior used his shield to counterattack and hurl the mutant. With the momentum, the creature was violently smashed against the asphalt. Right after, another monster jumped toward him from behind. The fighter quickly turned his face upon noticing the new threat. Before he could react, a shadow passed at high speed. With a single blow, the creature ambushing him was split in half. Ruila then revealed herself as the author of the attack, holding her weapon firmly. The swordswoman faced the danger with a determined look. With a gesture of gratitude, the companion commented that new allies had arrived for battle. The celebration was interrupted by the arrival of a medium-sized degenerate, making him question how they deal with the threat. Unfazed, the warrior responded. There was no problem while gripping the handle of her weapon. She then activated the blade to launch a triple attack, stating the situation was still under control. One of the monsters is struck head-on by an energy beam fired from a distance. Rula turns sharply as she senses the incoming impact. Moments later, a massive explosion disintegrates the creature. Lijin scolds her for the risk, but she just comments on the boss's confidence in her own aim. Amid the flames, new creatures emerge to attack the group. He asks if the gladiator can keep going, and the warrior confirms the shield bearer is ready. From afar, Song Chao watches the multiple explosions lighting up the city sky. The young man is impressed by the intensity of the unfolding battle. Outside the parking lot, the group waits for an opening to advance. At that moment, Shen Jiawen spots a vehicle in the distance and asks if it's his car. As soon as Song Chao confirms, the commander prepares the next step of the mission. Right after, the leader orders him to follow his companion to get the vehicle while she provides cover. With a determined smile, the warrior accepts the task without hesitation. He then shouts for the logistics chief to follow him. Running toward the target, the fighter warns the guy not to fall behind. While leaping, the man yells for the logistics chief to keep up. Upon landing, he's faced with several creatures surrounding the vehicle in the parking lot. The monsters turn in his direction, ready to attack. Aiming his weapon, the warrior orders the creatures to back off from what belongs to the group and opens fire. With a kick, he finishes off the first enemy that had been hit by the shot. He continues firing to eliminate the remaining threats. Right away, he yells for Song Chao to run and start the car immediately. Taking advantage of the cover, the young man rushes toward the vehicle as fast as he can. Already inside the car, he prepares for the escape. Outside, the fighter continues holding back the creatures to protect the extraction. At the moment of departure, a long-necked monster appears at the driver's window. Startled, the guy reacts by pointing a weapon directly at the creature. Before he can fire, the monster's head is severed by an energy blade. Smoke rises from Shen Jiawen's weapon after the precise shot. Positioned at a distance, the commander reveals herself as the one responsible for the shot that saved Song Chao's life. Song Chao is surprised to realize the commander had saved him. Right after he gets in the car, his companion yells for the young man to hit the gas and get out of there. The vehicle's door lock is released for departure. The car then accelerates abruptly, leaving the fallen monster behind. As the vehicle maneuvers through the lot, the leader eliminates the approaching monsters. Seeing the warrior approach, the guy shouts that he'll stop the car for her to get in. She refuses the help and tells them to keep accelerating without looking back. With a boost from her boots, the fighter leaps just as the car passes by. The young woman then lands precisely on the roof of the moving vehicle. Positioning herself firmly, she prepares to continue the fight. With a confident smile, the chief announces she'll stay in the rear guard. Right after, a horde of mutants begins chasing the car. Over the communicator, she informs the other groups that the objective has been achieved. The message that retreat is cleared is received by Lijin and Ruila. Concluding the orders, Shen Jimei is instructed to use their coordinates to clear a path through the debris. Inside the truck, the hooded medic orders everyone to board so they can depart for Linjiang. With that, one of the men mocks how the commander just ordered them to blast a path by force. Amid a gigantic explosion, the car accelerates with the warrior still on the roof. Even with debris falling, she stays firm and alert to the surroundings. At the wheel, the young man continues driving at high speed along the escape route. Right behind, the armored truck breaks through the wall of fire to join the convoy. Already inside the main vehicle, the leader points forward and yells for everyone to advance. Finally assembled, the convoy of vehicles heads through the destroyed streets toward Linjiang base. As soon as they arrive, a woman in a white coat asks if they're planning to move their nest back to Linjiang. The commander explains it's just temporary shelter, as she doesn't want the beast tide to bankrupt them. Even without a place to stay, she asks for shelter and is told this is a private hospital, not an inn. With the offer of a supply crate, the medic demands meat and eggs and is called a thief. She then calculates the deal, establishing that one supply crate equals 1 month's rent. Next, the woman spots the car and questions what happened to it. Song Chao's vehicle is completely unrecognizable, with the body and windows destroyed. Seeing the state of the car, the young man falls to his knees and begins crying in despair. The commander tries to downplay the damage, but he shouts that the vehicle was worth the same as tens of thousands of supplies. The revelation about the car's value leaves the warrior completely shocked. Seeing the two devastated on the ground, the medic comments sarcastically about how they seem to be having fun. Right after, she questions whether the leader is certain about the beast tide's arrival. Xu Jing states that besides their group, no one else has reported any sign of the monsters approaching. The commander stares at her and asks if she's doubting her word. With a confident smile, she introduces herself as Shen Jiawen, making it clear her warning is serious. With total conviction, she states that every movement in the western suburb is under her control, knowing even what the mutants will do. She then declares with certainty that the beast tide will come, and whoever doubts it will pay the consequences. Faced with the threat, Xu Jing simply responds with indifference and turns away. Right after, a person approaches with a tablet, saying the intelligence department found her to give her a message. The commander turns her attention to the message being displayed. The notice states that the city leaders have gathered to question her about the beast tide situation. While reading the message, Shen Jiawen calls for Song Chao, who responds without understanding why. Without beating around the bush, she tells him to go with her to the meeting the next day, and the young man simply agrees. The commander explains it'll be a chance to introduce the team and that the damaged car will be delivered to Midiu for repairs. Hearing the conversation, Xu Jing questions whether she's really prepared for what awaits her. The warrior admits she has no choice but to go, as she couldn't handle one or two of the leaders alone. Alone, Song Chao holds the tablet and tries to understand what's happening around him. The next day, they arrive at Linjiang's North District, an area marked by futuristic buildings. The guy is impressed by the imposing architecture of the local base. He then asks why they're there instead of going straight to the meeting, and she explains she needs a prior agreement with King Yan. Surprised, the young man wants to know if it's the same King Yan she's had problems with in the past. The commander confirms the suspicion without looking away. With a tense expression, she admits the two have a complicated history. Right after, the two walk through a hallway with polished and shiny floors. A receptionist in a skirt and suit greets them at the entrance. The woman informs Shen Jiawen that the minister is already waiting for her. The receptionist shows surprise seeing that the visitor came personally for the conversation. Calmly, the commander explains that a prior agreement with King Yan will avoid many future complications. The silver-haired woman states she perfectly understands her intentions. Right after, the hostess asks the two to follow her, receiving thanks from the leader. As they walk, Song Chao comments quietly that the reception doesn't seem as hostile as he imagined. Shen Jiawen responds that in a way, she could be considered an ally. The explanation leaves the young man even more confused about the situation. As soon as they reach the door, the receptionist announced to the minister that Miss Shen Jiawen and Mr. Song Chao had arrived. Right after, a voice from inside the room authorized their entry. Sitting with her back to the door, the long-haired blonde host called out the commander's name. Surprised, the young man discovered in that instant that the so-feared King Yan was actually a woman. Faced with the unexpected scene, the receptionist warned that the host was about to lunge forward. One of the guards tried to restrain her, but she kept insisting on calling for Shen Jiawen. With a quick motion, the blonde freed herself from the guard's hand. Right after, she leaped over the desk toward the visitors. With open arms, she shouted the warrior's name once more. The minister then stated that it had been a long time since they'd seen each other. Next, she advanced, trying to embrace her. Without hesitation, the commander prepared a kick to intercept the advance. The strike hit the host's face dead on. With the force of the impact, the woman was thrown backward while Shen Jiawen landed firmly. Seeing the commotion, the receptionist released an aura that enveloped her hands. In an instant, she launched an energy blast at the minister to stop her. With the impact, the blonde screamed as she was thrown back again. Next, the assistant asked them to hold her. Completely paralyzed, Song Chao only heard the request not to let the minister embarrass herself any further. While being restrained by the guards, the blonde begged them to let her go, pleading not to lose control before the true presence. Shen Jiawen simply observed the entire commotion in silence. Meanwhile, the receptionist covered her face, not knowing how to contain her own boss. Outside the building, the screams continued echoing through the city. Although there was tension in the air, Shen Jiawen tried to justify the confusion, saying the host had just gotten excited seeing a friend she hadn't seen in a long time. For her part, the receptionist regretted the scene, especially not knowing there was an unknown man present. Embarrassed, young Song Chao apologized for the rudeness and said it was no problem. Now calmer, the blonde-haired woman introduced herself as head of the Linjiang Census Department, one of the city's most powerful figures. As she spoke, her body tied with ropes was revealed. Sitting in the chair, she demanded they restore her freedom, but the receptionist responded that she could dream on. Right after, the warrior decided to formally introduce the blonde to Song Chao. The head of the census department, Farah Ruolin, was also the leader of a large organization responsible for population control in the city. Due to her cruelty and her mercenary subordinates, she earned the nickname King Yan of the Inferno Palace. Hearing the explanation, the young man whispered that she was a pervert, to Shen Jiawen's irritation. Out of patience, the fighter said she hadn't come there to watch that scene and asked if they could get straight to business. The host simply lowered her head in silence. Next, the receptionist commented on how it broke her heart, while an energy rope materialized. With that, the bonds were undone and the prisoner freed from the chair. Now standing, Ruolin referred to her as her beloved childhood friend. Sitting on the sofa, the warrior directly questioned what the host meant. Right after, she warned her not to create confusion about the beast tide during the afternoon meeting. On the other side of the room, Ruolin assured that she was also responsible for the city's security. The minister then pointed out that, except for her group, no one else had reported the monster's approach. Still, the fighter stated she would explain everything at the meeting and that the beast tide would be immense. With a disdainful air, the blonde commented on her self-confidence and asked if there was another reason for the visit. The warrior then revealed she needed to buy equipment and supplies directly from Ruolin. The leader explained she needed special ammunition to pierce level 2 equipment and arm her team. Hearing the request, the host questioned whether she had money to pay for all that. With a confident smile, the fighter simply confirmed she had the means to pay. Still amid the tensions, Shen Jiawen introduced Song Chao as the logistics officer of the flower shop and her new partner. Though awkward, the young man introduced himself and heard the leader explain that he had access to rare, high-quality products. The revelation sparked Ruolin's interest. With a smile, the minister said she would wait and see, while her assistant requested a supply list for the exchange. Without hesitation, the warrior agreed to the terms. Right after, she stood up and stated that the remaining matters would be discussed at the afternoon meeting. The host and her aide simply watched the pair leave. Shortly after their departure, the assistant asked if the boss was sure about that decision. She then argued that by providing a supply channel, they would lose the chance to interfere in the western suburbs. Ruolin responded that it didn't matter, because no other faction would allow the region to fall into third-party hands. She concluded that it was more advantageous to maintain a good relationship with the new ally than to try to take her territory. The minister then reflected that if the beast tide was real, Shen Jiawen would use the crisis to consolidate her team's power. With that, Ruolin ordered Mibo to pull back the troops and confirmed that the alert about the monsters was probably true. Alone, the blonde thought about how complicated the whole situation was. Outside, the warrior commented on how the minister never missed an opportunity, trading a favor for a supply channel. At 4:30 in the afternoon, the meeting began in Linjiang's central district. In a virtual meeting room, one of the participants proposed that everyone reach a consensus about the beast tide. Given that, the head of the census department, Farah Ruolin, suggested a vote to decide whether they would trust Shen Jiawen. The president of the Linjiang security group, Wei Yun, pondered that despite understanding her intention, there were no signs of the beast tide. Soon the head of the intelligence agency agreed, stating that a small wave in the western district didn't justify such mobilization. Ignoring the doubts, the warrior stated that the beast tide would be bigger than they imagined, and that she was only there to prepare, not to ask them to believe her. The two men commented on how she continued not giving a damn about others' opinions. Ignoring the discussion, Ruolin enthusiastically declared she had already decided to believe her completely. Out of patience, the fighter asked Ruolin to be quiet and admitted she understood the doubts, but reinforced that no one in Linjiang knew the mutants better than she did. Next, she proposed a bet to the intelligence chief. If she lost, she would open the western suburb to him, but if she won, he would reveal his true location. The hooded man called her a bastard, while Wei Yun observed that she seemed very confident to make such a bet. With total certainty, the warrior confirmed she was serious. Next, she admitted to Wei Shu that despite her flaws, she would never lie about Linjiang's security and hoped they would trust her professional warning. Concluding her speech, she warned that they might not believe her, but they would have to bear the consequences. With that, her holographic image began to disappear from the meeting room. The two leaders simply watched in silence as she disconnected. Despite the tension, the intelligence chief stated he didn't believe in a large-scale beast tide, preferring to trust in data and analysis. Following that, Wei Yun agreed, saying the problem was only in the west suburb, and that they wouldn't use Linjiang's resources to help her. Ruolin listened to the other leaders' comments in silence. Already disconnected, the warrior reacted with contempt to the intelligence chief's words. Returning to the meeting, she asked if she could interpret his statement as a personal insult. The hooded man denied the accusation immediately. With that, she admitted that for someone who only trusts data, the situation wasn't convincing. Right after, she announced that Song Chao and Mibo would handle purchasing the supplies, surprising Ruolin. Saying goodbye, the young woman said she'd see them in a few days and disconnected from the call. The combatant's chair in the virtual meeting room stood empty. Wei Yun commented that besides being confident in her judgment, she seemed furious. Ruolin then told the intelligence chief that she wouldn't need such a pretext to take the west suburb, and he defended himself, saying he only spoke the truth. The man leaned forward and asked if the others were really satisfied with the situation. Wei Yun pondered that it would be very difficult to develop the west suburb without going through her. Agreeing, Ruolin concluded it was easier to cooperate than waste energy on the problem, preferring to focus on her own territory. The intelligence chief insisted the issue was the beast tide, accusing her of using the danger to mobilize Lin Jiang in her favor. The minister reflected on the accusation, remembering the warrior didn't act without having a big profit in the situation. With that, she concluded she didn't believe she had such a simple plan. Back in the room, the combatant stretched leisurely. Soon, Shen Jiamei entered and called for her sister, who asked if there was any news. The young woman then informed that 80% of the West teams were already on their way to offer support. Even without understanding, Shen Jiamei questioned why Lin Jiang's people knew so little about mutants. The warrior explained that previous beast tides probably gave them a false sense of security. Meanwhile, in the communication room of Shujing's private hospital, the negotiation began. The trade list started with batteries and charging accessories for vehicles. Next, military nutritional solutions and various types of ammunition were displayed. The list also included various weapon models and their respective ammunition. Holding the device, Song Chao concluded the presentation of all the supplies they could offer in the trade. Mibo then agreed to prepare the exchange, lamenting the absence of heavy weapons on the list. The young man extended his hand to seal the cooperation agreement. However, his hand passed directly through Mibo's holographic image. Surprised, he quickly recoiled upon realizing what had happened. Embarrassed, the guy apologized for forgetting she was a projection, and the woman replied there was no problem. Sitting down, Mibo informed they would take the supplies to the flower shop the next morning for the exchange. The young man then said goodbye to her as the holographic image disappeared from the room. With the deal closed, he concluded that despite the difficulties, the negotiation had been a success. As soon as the conversation seemed to end, one of the men asked if the negotiation was already over. Right after, he and Li Jin commented to Song Chao that it seemed they had come out at a disadvantage in the deal. The young man then explained it was a necessary measure and that for him, those foods weren't that precious. Surprised by the response, the two highlighted what a reliable logistics officer he was. Reflecting on his role, Song Chao thought that people from the modern world didn't possess the same fighting skills they had. Suddenly, a voice asked what they were talking about. Shen Jiawen approached the group, asking to be included in any interesting topic. The blonde man told how the young man had made a bad deal, leaving the leader confused. She turned to him and questioned about the price table she had given him. With that, the guy explained he only made a small concession to guarantee immediate delivery of supplies and get help finding a shop in Linjiang. The other man pointed out that the amount conceded didn't even cover the rent at Dr. Shu's hospital. The warrior agreed that thinking about it that way, it was better not to worry about the details. Next, she asked Song Chao if they had food and ammunition to spare. The guy confirmed that the Census Department supplies would arrive the next day and wanted to know the reason for the question. The leader then instructed him to prepare 4 portions of nutritional solution for the guests arriving tomorrow. Soon, she revealed she had found some helpers, keeping the young man busy with resource trading between groups. Meanwhile, Shen Jiawen constantly received visits from unknown and mysterious people. As time passed, the atmosphere around became increasingly tense. Then the threat finally arrived, starting with the West Urban District. Soon, the survivors who fled the region informed the city guards that the beast tide had begun. In less than half a day, the Census Department of the North District found rare mutants in the area and brought bodies as proof. The creatures' carcasses were presented to Mibo as evidence of the attack. While the leaders discussed possible countermeasures, new information began to emerge. An urgent report left the intelligence chief and his subordinate completely alarmed. In a short time, the intelligence agency in the east suburb was attacked by a gigantic mutant. Even with many managing to escape, the losses during the attack were considerable. Finally, chaos arrived at the gates of the south suburb. The wall guards were shocked upon spotting the approaching danger. Suddenly, a massive explosion hit the refugee camp. With the surprise attack, the disorganized camp instantly lost 2 of its slave fields. The monster growled, displaying its sharp fangs. Right after, a gigantic creature emerged amid the flames, commanding the advancing horde. In just 2 days, the death toll and casualties had already reached thousands. Completely shocked, the intelligence chief wondered how this could have happened. Outside the city, the monster horde continued to gather, preparing for the final attack. In the midst of the crisis, a holographic call asked if he needed help. Shen Jiawen and Farah Ruolin then appeared in the projection. To the man's surprise, irritated by their presence, he questioned whether the warrior had come to laugh at his misfortune. With a smile, she denied the accusation and said she was there to discuss serious matters. She soon commented that whoever should laugh at the situation had already laughed enough. With the beast tide already formed, the only option left was to face the threat. Ruolin explained that the problem wasn't a lack of strength, but low efficiency in eliminating the monsters, and the warrior asked for a solution. With one finger raised, the minister said she had a suggestion to resolve the impasse. The other two leaders looked at each other, surprised by her proposal. Under the light of a red moon, the dark forest concealed new dangers. 3 mutant creatures moved stealthily through the vegetation. Soon the group found a metal container releasing smoke in the middle of the woods. One of the creatures approached the object and sniffed the air. Suddenly, several monsters around them began to roar in agitation. Shortly after, one of them attacked the container with its long tongue. The visor of one of the team members confirmed the target's movement. Observing the scene, Lejin announced that the monsters had started to move. From atop a tree, he reported that the horde was advancing toward the bait box, to Shen Jiawen's satisfaction. With that, the leader ordered them to hurry and deploy the new bait at the next location. Running through the forest, she shouted for everyone to follow her. As they advanced, Lejin and the other warrior showed surprise at the plan's effectiveness. Shen Jiami explained that they wouldn't have survived in the West if they didn't have a few tricks. The device emitted sound waves and specific odors that generated a pheromone to attract the mutants. Influenced by the bait, the monsters approached and devoured it. Sometimes, the creatures even fought each other to zhengduo the object. By deploying a new bait as soon as the previous one was destroyed, it was possible to guide the horde's movement. The fighter then declared that this clever creation would become her trump card to compete with the other regions. Remembering the meeting, she repeated the word suggestion she had heard before. The scene returned to the operations base, confirming the proposal. With a confident smile, she asked if the others didn't agree that concentrating the horde in one place would be advantageous for human firepower. The intelligence chief, however, questioned how they could control the movement of such a dispersed horde. The warrior then warned him about the danger of doing nothing, reminding him that the southern defenses could be easily abandoned, allowing the city's invasion. Thus, Ruolin commented on how spiteful the warrior was for using the situation to pressure the southern leaders. Then, the intelligence chief questioned her about whether she had any guarantee that her plan would work. With that, Wei Yun's image appeared again in the meeting room. In turn, the security group president offered the necessary supplies, as long as she could attract 80% of the horde to the south of the city. Shortly after, Ruolin asked if the fighter had confidence to secure such funding, and the young woman just smiled. Under the moonlight at a base, her answer was that there would be no problem. Thus, the strategist guaranteed she could guide most of the horde out of the southern city. The only condition she imposed was having enough material to produce the pheromone baits. Already in the field, she crouched down to talk with Lejin. Then, Shen Jiame added that she would use special channels to gather the Western teams scattered during the mission. With enough teams in the field, she believed they could group together the main force of the beast tide. Next, a diagram illustrated how the baits would be used to attract and redirect the monster's flow. The device released a signal that drew the creatures in its direction. During the attraction process, the number of mutants would decrease due to internal conflict among them. Finally, the commander informed that she would meet with the Western survivors to organize the bait troops. With a handshake, she entrusted her new allies with responsibility for food and ammunition supplies. Thus, the night operation was initiated in the forest. Around a campfire, the leader confirmed that the number of people was sufficient for the mission. At that moment, the hooded man thanked everyone for trusting her and supporting the cause. One of the warriors present revealed his face marked by scars and mechanical parts. With a determined smile, the young woman proposed to her Western compatriots an insertion operation to cross through the horde. The main plan consisted of using scout teams to guide most of the beast tide toward the south of the city. Under her command, the squads moved and deployed baits constantly to alter the monster's course. Soon, one of the mutants approached the small glowing bait on the ground. When the number of monsters in a group was smaller than expected, the teams took advantage to attack. Thus, the warriors eliminated the creatures that deviated from the main horde. Each squad remained alert to the surroundings to ensure the mission's success. Upon encountering stronger individual creatures, several groups cooperated to carry out the attraction work. The tactic proved effective even against the most gigantic and dangerous monsters. Each team member prepared for the next phase of the operation. Meanwhile, in the mountainous area of Linjiang's eastern suburb, a sniper commented that the target had appeared too quickly. Soon after, a gigantic boar-shaped creature advanced at high speed, raising a cloud of dust. In the forested area of Linjiang's eastern suburbs, the night continued under the moonlight. Shen Jiame approached, concerned about the operation, but the strategist responded that she had found something worthy of attention. Soon, the leader explained that, up until 2 hours ago, the plan was going perfectly with the horde moving south. Next, she pointed to the map showing that small hordes in the east were gathering unusually toward the mountains. The device displayed a large red alert over the area where the strategy was failing. Suddenly, Midyu arrived out of breath with a report from the mountain team, making the commander question the situation. The young woman revealed that they had found the hybrid clan, leaving everyone completely shocked by the news. Not understanding the term, the other warriors heard the hooded man explain that it was their own designation. Then, he made them recall the ghouls to begin explaining the new threat. The warrior clarified that when mutants of that level gain power and intelligence, they form tribes and are called hybrids. The explanation concluded that some hybrids evolve monsters into a personal guard, meaning they'd be facing an enhanced army. With this, the others realized the situation was far more dangerous than a simple beast tide. The fighter with cybernetic parts approached the leader and asked what the next step would be. Next, he reminded her that everyone had trusted her and that now she needed to take responsibility and give the order. With no other choice, the strategist simply questioned what else could be done facing the new reality. With her eyes fixed on the horizon, she decided that the only option was to go there and deal with the problem directly. In the mountains, the lone marksman continued to watch over the area. Suddenly, a hand reached out in his direction. The warrior was startled when touched on the shoulder by surprise. Turning around, he found Shen Jiwen and asked what the current situation was. Still startled, the man asked her not to appear like that, and the leader apologized before questioning where the hybrid clan was. Regaining his composure, he pointed and informed her that the threat was about 2 kilometers away. Soon, the other team members arrived and spotted the creature in the distance. Before them, a gigantic monster walked with its followers through the forest. The creature revealed itself as a hybrid with enormous fangs and a robust body. Immediately, the monster opened its mouth and let out a thunderous roar. Shen Jiawen then asked the marksman how many people they had, and he estimated about 50 fighters. The cyborg warrior questioned her about the plan, and she explained that they needed to eliminate the hybrid to unite the eastern forces with the main battlefield. Concluding the strategy, the commander ordered them to attack first to reduce the number of guards and fall back if the horde approached.